Hello, everybody, and welcome to the deepest dive, the best, most thorough discussion about Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade Intermission on the internet. I'm Ben Hansen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for finding us. I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hey, it's me.
And we got Grant, the Star of Hitman 3 here.
Oh, hey.
Welcome. And we also have best friend Ronnie. Wearing a pretty sweet Deepest Dive sweater. I couldn't help but notice. Oh my god. Yeah, it's specifically the Final Fantasy VII hoodie. Very cool digs, Ronnie.
Yeah, I don't know why you charged me $125 for it.
I just thought it would make more sense. Cool. You know, you value things you pay more for. We are here for a huge community game club discussion about Yuffie's Big Day Out, the big DLC for the PlayStation 5 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake. We have
Which would have been a less confusing name, I think, honestly. If they just called it
would have.
Hey guys, what does intergrade mean?
You'll understand when you're older. But what this is
after the whole game is done, after you've played all the parts, it'll all come together. It'll make sense.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. This is a big community game club. What we've done is we have gathered together the MinnMax community, and if you support us at any tier, we said play along with us, submit a comment, submit a question, anything under the sun, and we'll compile it in here. So thank you to everybody who submitted wonderful thoughts on this whole DLC that we're going to read through as we walk through all of this DLC. Spoiling this DLC, by the way. But I assume we're all on the same page. Spoiling this DLC, not spoiling the original Final Fantasy VII in any big way. Yes, yes?
I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
Now, here's the thing. No big spoilers for Final Fantasy VII. We're going to talk about the character of Yuffie. We're probably going to mention locations you go to in the original Final Fantasy VII because they're mentioned here and stuff, but no big, obvious plot story spoilers. Is that the best way to put it, Ronnie?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Put it better myself.
And to ask a question like right away.
Yeah.
This is not like an adaptation of stuff that happened in the original, right? Like this is wholly new. Sonon's a new character. This is like, you know, this is like a Yuffie adventure that you did not experience in Final Fantasy VII, correct?
Yep, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, it touches on a lot of things, but yeah, it's definitely new content. And this is kind of like a rekindling of our big, huge community game club discussion, the deepest dive for Final Fantasy VII Remake that we did last year as the world was falling apart. Obviously, we're missing Jeffem now. He's okay, everybody. He just doesn't have a PlayStation 5. And so he didn't get to play this DLC, which is a real bummer. But we're all doing this in his honor. For Jeffem!
For Jeffem.
In solidarity.
Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. You can unlock the podcast version of The Deepest Dive, also The Deepest Dive for Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is the best, most thorough discussion about that game on the internet, all of our other Deepest Dives, a bunch of other benefits. If you go over there to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's and support us at that $5 tier. If you enjoy this type of content, you can support it or join it over on Patreon. So we'd appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Table's set. We're ready to go. Ronnie, how are you feeling?
Oh man, how long has it been?
Since we've talked, or since we've talked about Final Fantasy VII?
When did it come out? Was that March?
I think it was April 2020.
Oh, long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, I'm feeling pretty good. I wrapped this game up at 6:39 p.m. 21 minutes ago, so I'm ready.
Man, that is hot off the grill. Spicy takes coming in, man.
All right.
Did you skip the final cutscenes to like speed it up to like get
they were boring.
So the way we start every episode of The Deepest Dive is with a little segment we like to call Most Common Comments.
Sorry, that's not how we were starting it.
Oh, no, please don't be naive here. What we're doing is we're trying to figure out the most common comment. What do you think was the most common comment submitted over on Patreon about Intermission? Grant, do you have a guess?
Yeah, my guess is why is Chodley back in this game?
Okay, great.
Chadley.
Okay,
no,
great.
it's Churdley. I think it's Churdley.
Kyle, do you have a guess?
The button on Yuffie's pants.
Interesting. Ronnie, do you have a guess?
I thought it was going to be something related to Churdley as well. If if not Turtles, then maybe just something to do with Fort Condor.
Fort Condor did get a lot of comments, but you were all right before you even knew it. Of course, the most common comment was just Roche.
Checks out.
By a mile, by a country mile. If you're counting that as a comment, which I guess we technically have to legally.
Yeah.
What a stand-up guy that Roche.
Oh.
He is a stand-up guy.
I mean, we should just get right into this big reveal. Grant, walk me through the moment when you realized that our big boy was back in town.
Well, I was doing the Fort Condor stuff, looking for my next opponent.
That's right.
Round the corner and see those beautiful locks floating in the breeze. Hello, friend. Do you have a minute to spare?
Somehow he has even dialed it up. He went from an 11 to just like glowing and trying to shove himself through your TV monitor. Like, I'm here, look at me, please. I'm Roche, I'm still alive. I really had like a weird moment where I actually ran by him. And then I just heard that like, well, hello. And I was like, wait, what? Where is this SOB?
Okay, I didn't interact with him. I didn't know Roche was in the DLC.
Come again?
It's not main story, right? Like you can just skip him, right?
Wow.
I mean, and the way that I
Did
guess
I
you
talk
can
to him and not recognize him? Did I have face blindness?
you can skip love and giving in life and just die as a baby, I guess. I mean, technically there's a lot of things that are optional, but he's right there in the main path. I feel like they really forced you to run by him as you're running to the train at the end of chapter 1 is when I first encountered him.
You did play Final Fantasy VII. Is that right?
No, I played 9 for the anime. I'm getting hyped for that.
Mistake.
No, I totally ran by him. I mean, the Fort Condor stuff, I could not get through the tutorial fast enough and put it behind me. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it, and I was just like eager to see the story. So like I kind of sprinted through chapter 1. And so I missed Roche. I didn't even talk to him or anything.
That is sacrilegious. God, I miss Jeffem. He would have savored Roche, wouldn't he? Roche, hey, welcome to the Rochecast, everybody. He's so absurd in this. Like, he starts out by insinuating that Yuffie reminds him of Cloud. And then he goes on and on about like how Cloud, like, oh, you may think he loves his sword, but he loves his bike more than anything else, doesn't he, Yuffie? It's like, I guess. I don't know why you're still thinking about him. It's really getting creepy, Roche.
That's what I like about this. I mean, this is like in my sort of fanfic about Roche.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about what I really like is he just becomes obsessed with pretty much the person that like beat him. And he loves that passion so much that he just perseverates on him for days and days and days to the point where he's in town just screaming for this guy.
Yeah, like he drove his bike off of the plate down into the Sector 7 slums, and now he's just slowly cruising by all these houses looking for Cloud.
I love that.
I like that the two characters that we've been introduced to, Sonon could not be a more grounded, like, regular character. And then Roche is just a cartoon.
Yeah.
Also, he makes it very clear, Kyle, that when you beat him, that he's like, oh, you're my new best friend. I'm never going to forget you. He's basically coming out and saying, like, I'll be seeing you later, winky, winky. It's really a lot. And then his idle animation.
I'm a fan favorite now.
His idle animation is also just like, it's just like freaking insane. It never stops.
Welcome to a new gift there, Ben.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you know what? It feels good. In reality, by the way, not in reality, but Stephen Lamson did submit this, and it's a comment that he called himself the most common comment, which he said, most common comment, I still can't find a PlayStation 5 to play this game. People are angry. Yeah, that is completely understandable. Ronnie, you actually are playing on like the MinnMax PS5. So this is like your first real PS5 experience, right?
Yeah, let the record show that I also do not have a PS5, and it is very frustrating that I want one and I can't get one. But yeah, it was awesome to have the brief opportunity to play on the MinnMax PS5. Yeah, first experience. On that note, hey, guys, well, one of the things that I kind of noticed is like graphics look pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you guys end up playing on quality or performance?
Oh, I was performance. Yeah, I guess what it
always
performance.
Yeah, it defaults to performance, right?
I think it does. Yeah.
It usually defaults to quality for me. I usually have to flip it for every game. But
interesting.
Yeah, I always go performance myself. Yeah.
I switched it back and forth a couple times, and it was on performance as a default for me.
Okay.
And I was trying to like focus on tiny details to see if I noticed any change between the two. It was in like the middle of chapter 2, and I honestly couldn't. I was trying to trick myself that maybe I saw something different, but I didn't.
I mean, playing at 60 feels different. I think that's noticeable enough. But I mean, not exactly the graphical powerhouse. Like there's still some pop in every now and then, but seeing like, screens side by side, it's like, okay, they did do a fair amount of work here when you see those screenshots, but playing through it didn't have a huge impact on me for like, this is a whole new Final Fantasy VII remake or anything like that.
I mean, the close-ups on the faces, I think there were moments like with the eyes specifically stood out to me as being like, oh, those look really good. But it wasn't like what you're saying. It wasn't a leap over the PS4 version for me anyway, other than that frame rate. That frame rate's really nice.
Yeah.
Did it jump from 30 to 60?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I thought it felt amazing. And I also, same thing with Grant. I actually took a side-by-side picture to see, because I had that same thing. Like, I think I noticed a difference. And then as I was doing that process, I forgot which one was quality and which one was standard. and that was I just could not see anything. But I could notice almost like a 30 FPS frame drop, which seems weird to me.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, welcome to the new generation here, Ronnie, where you spend half the game bouncing back and forth trying to figure out, how do I feel next gen? Carl Lewington wrote in saying that the loading times in particular are 90% faster, and he really loves it, which is, absolutely something that, we shouldn't just gloss over here. Victor Pham submits a comment over on Patreon and asks, was it the right move to lock all this stuff behind a PlayStation 5 exclusive, to lock this DLC behind a PlayStation 5 exclusive? Was there anything in the DLC that warranted being on PS5 only? I don't think so.
No.
Technically, I'm sure it was a relief. I think if I had to guess, it's probably some funky contract Sony partnership stuff where Sony really wants to have it in the commercials. Like, you need a PlayStation 5 for this. But then also, I think it's also a really smart way to kind of soften the blow for when the next episode of 7 Remake is going to be new gen only. Like that
could be 3 years though.
It could be 3 years, so it would be assumed, but there's still probably going to be some bellyache no matter what, because maybe they'll show a trailer a year from now or something like that. And so if they already just kind of rip off that Band-Aid with, a lower profile title, maybe it's a nice way to kind of wade fans into those waters.
I actually thought it was going to be like
dry.
Right.
I actually thought it was going to be an Xbox counter. Like, I thought during E3 we were going to get Final Fantasy VII Remake on Xbox Series X, but if you want the DLC, that's on PS5. But that didn't happen. So
yeah, it super didn't happen. Let's see. I had a real big moment. I had a moment, y'all, just booting up the game and hitting that title screen again. I don't know if it hit anybody again. It's just like this avalanche, no pun intended. It's like, oh, that's right. This is why I love this game. Just like that blast of the title screen music puts you right back in that zone in such a nice way.
I watched the first, I twice I watched just the opening cinematic, and both times I get the chills. Like, how is that still happening?
Is that why
every time?
Is that why you were so late and just ripped up the DLC now, so you just kept playing the opening cinematic over and over again and dun? It's a lot of that stuff. Grant, was it like riding a bike? What was it like getting back into the game?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of lag period trying to readjust to the controls again. Biggest thing that made me feel dumb was not upgrading my weapon for a good chunk of chapter 1.
Totally. Yep. It was like towards the end of chapter 1, I was like, oh crap, and went back to it. But then it's like, hey, it's just a shopping spree, and it's get to go around to all these funky crystals, so it kind of makes up for it.
It's nice though.
Let's see. We got Roberto Zayas, who submits a comment. It's already been out there asking, so what's the deal with Yuffie's unbuttoned pants? It seems very un-ninja to me. And then E&T Clark replied to that comment saying, I'm with you. I yelled at her several times to button up her pants. Okay, all you gotta know about ninjas.
It's just a distracting thing. Like, if you see someone in public who has like a sleeve rolled up like that or something, you just want to like pull it down and fix it. I just was like, Yuffie, just hit the button. You're not done getting dressed.
All we know about ninjas is they travel light and they never buttoned their pants. Ninja protocol.
She's prepared for anything, though. Who knows if you have to go pantsless?
So you're saying, like, just in case she, like, snagged her pants on, like, a rusty Midgar fence, she'd be like, "Huzzah! Now I'm free!"
Yeah,
slow motion, like, reveal, right?
I mean, it is inherently a creepy move, because, like, the original design for Yuffie also pants unbuttoned, but you can really only see it, like, the concept art, of course.
Yeah.
But, like, to have, like, a 16-year-old have her pants unbuttoned, like, they're trying to make it sexy, right? There's no... What other reason is there to, like, hey, let's have this attractive character with her pants unbuttoned?
She's an airhead. I think that, like, I kind of felt like it was more in the realm of just like, yeah, she is still a kid. She really doesn't actually have her stuff together. And I mean, like, it kind of like plays into the theme of just like Sonon being like, you know what? I'm just going to like make her think that she's the boss. And she just like hook, line, and sinkers is like, yeah, I'm the boss. And I that's kind of how I conceptualize it. But yeah, obviously then there's the subtext of just like, yeah, an overly sexualized 16-year-old.
Right. So Sonon's like,
Ronnie, I'm wondering if this is another Roche situation where I missed something, but like she was very clear that she was a grown up. Like it was not a question for me. Like she made sure to say it a lot. So
you know, I forgot about that.
Yeah, maybe we played different parts or something.
I like the idea of Sonon just being like, you know, from It's a Good Life from Twilight Zone, be like, it's a real good thing, Yuffie, that you never button your pants. Good job, boss. You're the best. Just no matter what, he just has to give glowing praise because he really likes her dad.
Well, it's like a Nomura design, right? Like,
yeah.
Like he does all the characters. It's just that thing. It's like that made me think about it, where it was like it's a weird element of like a piece of concept art that was probably like a huge pain to animate or add like physics to. You know what I mean? Where it would have been so much easier to just have it be like button to pants.
Right.
There's still some weird character in it though. Like there's a part of me that
I actually like your idea of the airhead. Like I think that's more interesting to me than just be like Nomura thought it looked cool. You know what I mean? Like that actually I'll take. This is
okay, Ronnie, thanks for opening this can of worms. Without like, it's not even possible to spoil this, but from the original game, am I misremembering for never really associating Yuffie as being like ditzy and clumsy? Like in my memory, it's like she's feisty. It was kind of like her main tone, but was she clumsy in that original game?
I don't know if she was ever really clumsy, but I mean, like there wasn't like an air of just like, I don't know. Like I think they could slide that in as part of her just like basic personality, like the foundation of her personality, and I think that it just kind of works. Like if it wasn't pure clumsiness, or if it wasn't clumsiness, it was around that realm that she could exist.
It's hard to convey clumsiness in 12 polygons too. Like,
great point. Yeah,
I don't know. They could do a falling down animation or something like that.
Wait a second, didn't they absolutely do that when you first meet her and she's running towards the screen? Doesn't she fall over and then keep going?
Are you thinking of Selphie from Final Fantasy VIII?
Nope.
Okay. I don't recall. That could
you've
be.
Never thought about Selphie?
I think about Selphie quite often, but
who needs Selphie when you got Melfi here in Intermission?
And but we'll get there.
I think you guys have watched it more recently than I have, because I only watched it like when it came out. But in Advent Rising, Advent Children?
Yeah.
She was clumsy, right? Like I remember her like having a big armful of materia.
Very much like in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII is where they really try and drive this home. Even like her opening, her big reveal, and who can forget it, in Dirge of Cerberus, a game that somehow we played through the entirety of. Like her reveal is almost the same, where she's in like this big cloaked thing, and then she's like, "Ta-da! It's me, the ninja!" And then she falls back and hits her head on a pipe and is just bleeding profusely. Yeah, and then her pants fall down. It's a great character.
Should have buttoned.
I do like her, by the way. I feel like we're being negative, but I think she's fun. Like I liked her stumbling into that first big fight where she loses her I don't know, what do you call that, a hoodie or something. Like I think she's a fun character that the camera really likes to move in and out of and around of all the time.
Yeah. Ronnie, what was your take on Yuffie going into this game?
Oh, like going into this game, like I always kind of assumed, like before this, is like Yuffie had a little bit more of just kind of like more of a selfish kind of mean streak in her, like that she's actually just not involved with the party, and that's yet to be seen, I guess. But like, yeah, it's that she's just kind of has her own singular focus, and now Yuffie has been given a little bit more character, and I agree with Kyle. Like, I think like the camera also kind of has fun with like how clumsy she is, and she's very eccentric, and she's got that youthful energy. I think that's gonna play pretty well with the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I think there's like something inherently cool about a secret character or like an optional character, and she's an optional character in the original game, Kyle. So I always liked her. Like I used her. And so I should be like Yuffie Defender number 1, but I think it's just kind of that Yuffie expanded universe stuff where it's a little bit like, she's kind of become the obnoxious character in a way that's a little grating every once in a while.
You also always root for the underdog characters.
Right.
So when they start to become popular, then you back off and you find a new underdog character.
That's right.
Like
now,
Roche, for example.
My heart's fluttering with you even mentioning his name. Grant, you seem like number 1 Yuffie hater going into this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to tip my hand in any way here, but coming into this thing, I was kind of having the feeling like I had the realization that I've never given an iota of thought as to what Yuffie is doing near Midgar.
Right.
Yep.
And after playing this, I get it now. I didn't think this was necessary in any way, shape, or form, but I'm glad that they made it, and I'm glad that I played it.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that is one of those things of even trying to figure out, like, is this, this is a whole can of worms, but like, is this DLC canonical in theory with the original Final Fantasy VII? Everyone's just assuming that, yes, this technically was happening. They just didn't understand or didn't ever cross paths or reveal it.
It could be.
It's still like shrouded in mystery because there's things that you see in this that have just no bearing on the original game.
Right.
Like characters from Dirge of Cerberus being 12 stories below Midgar. Like
we didn't see 12 stories below Midgar in the original game. There wasn't like an X-ray tour, so who knows what's hiding down there in the deep ground. We'll get into all that fun stuff. I think... Oh, go ahead, Grant.
In the main game, Wutai feels like it has a population of roughly 12.
Yeah.
So I've never understood how there could be a Wutai uprising when Midgar has like what feels like millions of people.
Yeah, they say 50,000 people in just Sector 7. And so...
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
I mean, so we're probably talking, close to 1 million maybe for all of the city.
It was really nice. It's nice to get some of that context of like Midgar and Shinra versus the Wutai as well. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
can I actually get some of that context? Like, who is Wutai? Like, they're another nation? They're another city?
Yeah.
It's Japan.
It's questions that I walked away with from the DLC. Like, as someone who had never beat the original, like, I was like, I don't really understand what Wutai is. They're kind of friendly with Avalanche, but like, not really.
I mean, you're based on this. I mean, I don't think it's too revealing to be like, it's basically an analogy for Japan. A little like a old-timey Japan is probably the best way of thinking about Wutai. But then even in the original...
another country.
Right,
yep.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. They actually, I think they even identified themselves as like another nation. And that's something to like... Okay. Yeah.
Right. And there's,
they don't like the bad Midgar CEOs. They don't like those.
Right. And there's history there that I guess we'll save for the future. Won't spoil exactly what happened there. But then for this, I mean, all you really need to know is, they were at war, which they talked about. Like, when they talked about in the original remake, when they're talking about Sephiroth being a war hero and stuff like that, like that's with the Wutai war here. Like everybody talking about being in a battle in the past. And, that was all in this war with Wutai, which they say was put in a stalemate, I think, or I don't know, ceasefire. There's some weird phrasing like that where Wutai is still kind of on edge and ready to attack here. And then because of that, they're like, okay, well, if Avalanche is going to take down Shinra, then we can go ahead and align ourselves with Avalanche, which they even talked about a little bit in that original game because they mentioned that like, what, they're aligned with Avalanche, but there's a different Avalanche. Like, it was just confusing with that idea of how many sects of Avalanche are there? It's really a tangled web.
It's weird to hear the characters near and dear to us be called Splinter Cell.
Right. And that was actually some of my favorite stuff is like that idea of, okay, the radical Barrett Avalanche, it's a little bit too much, but this core, original, less aggressive, less bomb-friendly version of Avalanche, they're going to take these ninjas from Wutai just because the idea of like these radical ninjas teaming up with the sector or the splinter cell, they could cause too much havoc. Like I like just Sonnen had that little line where he said like, okay, so you're trying to lock us down so we don't go join the batch of crazies over there who I just saw him briefly. He seemed to have a gun for an arm. He seems a little intense for us. But it's interesting like how much they're trying to care and note that original Splinter Cell, or yeah, I guess they do call him Splinter Cell. But even just the weird stuff about like the plate falling, which apparently everybody and their brother knows is going to happen. I mean, everyone's just blathering about this plate about to fall in this DLC. But then like
it's a rumor,
right? It's a lot of people are talking about it. It's just like one guy
Plate's
up there
falling.
Yeah, I already heard that.
But
only
like
only one.
You gotta move. You gotta move.
No.
But the friend mentioned it, you know, that they saved the blonde guy.
Right.
He's like, yeah, plate's falling. And I feel like they didn't react very much. And then like later, then I guess it was confirmed. And that sort of retroactively made me think, oh, I guess she didn't take him seriously. Like she just thought it was like wasn't actually going to happen.
Well, they made sure to say.
I felt like she didn't care really. Like at that point in time, like she had her own sort of objective, and you know, Wutai just kind of still thinks of like even she was kind of in this like ambivalent state of just like, well, it's Midgar. Like I don't make much of a distinction between like Shinra, Midgar, and the citizens of Midgar. And like as you know, time progresses, it kind of seems like that's when she realizes like, no, this is wrong. Like this sucks.
Yeah. Scott Mills writes in over there on Patreon and says, Yuffie is very impressive in how skilled and quickly she learns, but this makes her very arrogant. She learned Fort Condor in a day and really talks trash with all the Sector 7 players, knowing she will win before the matches even start. Which, by the way, that really made me laugh. The idea that she's going around and playing Fort Condor with all these members of Avalanche hours before their death and just trash talking them. Like the fact that this is now canon, that it's just like,
You gonna die.
honestly, it's just like talking, like fighting with Jesse, and it's just like, oh, boo-hoo, the world's smallest violin playing. Ooh, like meanwhile the plate's like slowly starting to come down. It's insane that it's canonical that like this cherished member of our party tortured her other friends before their deaths. Anyway,
he has the Shinra shoulder with like a drill. He's sticking it out.
Anyway, Scott Mills says, then fighting Scarlet, facing impossible odds, and she brushes it off as no problem. But then they fight Nero and Sonon dies. We didn't get to see much of Yuffie after that, but I'll be interested to see if she has the same arrogant confidence going forward in the series. Yeah, I feel like, Ronnie,
100%.
you were talking about that. That is like, it's a weird roller coaster ride for Yuffie to now be on, where when you meet her in the original game, she's feisty, get me all your materia, blah. And it's like this DLC was trying to give her this emotional arc of, oh, she's experienced so much pain and loss. And so now it's, yeah, what character are they going to pick up from in part 2? Probably the one that we saw at the end of the game, who is still like, everyone join Team Yuffie. But you know that there's just a little tragedy behind her eyes.
Yeah, she's constantly narrating her own movie where she's the star, and I don't think that's going to change in any way, shape, or form moving forward.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like at the end, like I kind of feel like, oh yeah, in Yuffie's mind, like everybody's going to join her. She's not joining them.
Right. Yeah, she really goes all in on being cocky. Like she's like just running around and be like, what's a good word to describe me? I'm thinking legendary. And it's like, I was thinking about it, like it's so weird to play like Cloud, also very cocky, but in like that understated kind of way, largely throughout the game, where it's like, I got this, leave it to me, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas then in
also
this,
has seen some
Right. Whereas, well, I mean, to be fair, Yuffie probably has as well. But then in this game, it's like she's probably the same level of confidence as a Cloud, but never stops screaming about it. So
and that's the naivety, right? I mean, like that's what's kind of endearing about her is that, I mean, like she has no real idea, but like I think with like but she's also like really, like a really good, talented fighter. So like part of it's just like, well, she hasn't sort of met her match. And so, yeah, she's going to be a little bit cocky.
Yeah.
A little bit arrogant.
Jason Wojnar submitted a comment on that front. He says, I love the way Yuffie is recontextualized in this new remake saga. Her personality is recognizable still, but we see those brutal moments of vulnerability, especially at the end when she storms out of the Shinra building. It reminds us that she's still a child and grew up in the midst of a war. Which I think is one of those things that you can kind of gloss over, but it's like, yeah, I guess you probably had a pretty intense childhood in like this war-torn Wutai trying to repair. And clearly, I think they're playing up more here in an interesting way that she has some feud with her father. I think she calls him like an alcoholic in this DLC. I think she even mentions that he's in prison. Am I right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I just played it 20 minutes ago, so yeah.
There we go. Yeah, they really build up the drama. Taylor C. submits a comment on Patreon saying, Yuffie's obsession with the ultimate materia and being a materia hunter is the reason the two break into the Shinra weapons facility. She leaves without the materia and Sonon dies for it. She's lost a lot in the short time. It's a smart and brief story that gives Yuffie a lot of emotional weight and dimension for further installments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. Just going in purely obsessed with, we just need this materia, then coming out being like, sweet Jesus, no more materia. But then it seems like it's a quick pivot for her still wanting materia again. But, you know.
Well, also just to like kind of rope back to the previous comment, like it also, like part of me kind of thinks like just the way that Yuffie is sort of sporadic and always kind of on the move. I suppose that kind of makes sense with somebody that is just like grew up in a war-torn country and also just like worked to become a ninja. Like it seems to kind of make sense that she's not entirely introspective if she's always kind of on the move, doing a particular thing.
Right. In her words, she's always big G, little O, go, go, go.
You got it.
Yeah. Kevin Padilla writes in and says, someone who has not played the original Final Fantasy VII, this whole chapter fell flat. I don't like Yuffie from the short intermission as she's a bit annoying. What should this have meant to those of us new to this story? Is a great question.
Kyle?
Take it away, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, for me, it was like, okay, I assume this is a sort of a beloved character that we're finally getting to play as. And
beliked character.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this was my assumption. It's like, oh, well, they wouldn't have made DLC about her if she wasn't like a fan favorite. You know what I mean? They would have picked a different character. And I mean, I guess it's just like in the same way that those minor characters in the main game got fleshed out into actually having backstories and becoming real people. I mean, that's what they want to do here. They want everyone to be a real person as much as they can be, you know?
Were you kind of confused, put off? Like, what was your take of the DLC overall?
I mean, I really liked it. I was more like the combat was like the big thing that I really enjoyed. Like that was the thing that I had the most fun with. Playing as Yuffie is super fun. And I like that they sort of pulled back a little bit and didn't have you managing a big party. Like Sonon was just like fully support, which I thought was cool. I was very confused by the final bosses. None of that made any sense to me at all. It was just like, okay, this guy looks scary. This guy, they put something over his mouth so they don't have to animate his mouth. I guess that's intimidating. Like I immediately Googled like, who are those people and why did I have to fight them?
Kyle, if it's any consolation, we did the exact same thing and we just played Dirge Cerberus last year.
And just for us experts, like, what'd you find out?
They're just like, you know, super soldiers that weren't in the main game, right? That were like retroactively added to the story.
Are you trying to insinuate
for me, Ronnie? Thank you.
Are you trying to insinuate you did not watch 15 hours of the Dirge of Cerberus?
Dude, we streamed that for you, bro.
Oh, sorry.
It's still at 0 views.
I can't believe this.
I will say, I did feel genuinely sorry for Yuffie when Sonon died. Like, I did feel like she was legitimately sort of wounded by that in an emotional way, even though that whole scene is just so cheesy and lame. Like, just like it's that it's a lot of Final Fantasy VII cutscenes are just like, it's just lame, but it's like, it is effective. It works, you know, like I understand the goal and it is achieved, but it's like while I'm watching it, I'm like, this is just so cheesy. It's just like, so, I don't know.
It's like that roller coaster ride of cheese where it's like, I hear you. There's nothing lamer in any fiction than somebody saving somebody else's life by just like pushing them a little bit. Like the whole like I'm gonna run and push
button. That was like a big emotional button, no pun intended, where it was like, oh, really? That's like the big moment is you press the elevator button for her? That's what you're sacrificing yourself?
But like how many sacrifices in films are it's somebody standing in the street, then somebody running out and pushing them, and then they get hit by the car and it just seems so insane. Like how many times in real life has this happened? Twice?
That's how I'm going to save your life, man.
Oh my God. Well, thank you.
It's in the works.
But then on the flip side, I totally agree that it still lands. Like when she gets the blood splattered on her face, it reminded me of like there's a death scene in Xenogears that's like that. This just looks awesome. So it's like, God, it works in small moments there.
I was just going to play Xenogears, man.
Oh, sorry. I'm not saying who gets blood splattered, but it's the most.
You don't know spoilers. You don't know whose face.
It is the most brutal death on the PlayStation 1. I will venture that far, other than the bad ending of Abe's Odyssey.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was disgusting. I almost vomited. But in terms of I totally agree. Like with the whole Sonon sacrifice thing. To me, it's the thing about like I think that there would be so much more impact if the push was through the elevator door, and there was nothing left. It just closed.
Right.
And there wasn't that intimate moment where it's just like acknowledge that I'm sacrificing myself and do it for 3 minutes straight, staring into my eyes. Just make it this moment where you actually have to grapple with what happened, just like Yuffie does.
Right.
And then go on. I think that'd be so much more impactful. Anyways,
I mean,
whole tangent.
This is absurd to say, why isn't it more like this? But that's one of my favorite things about The Last of Us Part 2 is when there are deaths, especially one I'm thinking of in particular, it's just so fast. Like somebody gets shot and you do not have time to be like, holy God, it just keeps on plowing ahead. And it's so amazing, but not in the vein of an anime drama, which is what we're working with here.
Yeah, totally.
This was actually one of the first times that I feel like I started putting myself in I just thought about what's the cultural significance of this thing for Japan. One thing that I kept on thinking about is for villains to just say something like, "Is that how you talk to your host?" Stuff like that. I hear that. I feel like a lot in anime type games, and I wonder about just what's why do I hear that often?
What are you talking about? Is that how you talk to your host?
Yeah, Scarlet.
Scarlet says that, I believe.
Yeah, Scarlet, or just somebody's in a trap and they're just and they have they're pulling all the strings and they're talking very down, like they're in some sort of cordial arrangement thing. All right, never mind. I just didn't blink. Goddamn stairs right now.
Japan is a very cordial country. Is that what you're going for?
Why do they talk like that?
Hey, what do you mean? I don't know. Storytelling. Samuel writes in and says, I really enjoyed having Sonon in the party. I just wished we could play as him for a bit. Do you think we'll see Sonon in future games, even though he's pretty badly wounded or dead? Also, Nero was one creepy guy, right?
That's a no for me, Doug.
I mean, that really bummed me out is when there's that hint of he'll be returning in some form. Nero will take his bandages and put them, I don't know, he'll use them as a wound or as a little bandage to fix them. I
would prefer if Nero did not pop into, not my Final Fantasy VII.
I mean, well, this is a whole Dirge conversation. Eventually, they're going to get to that stuff. No. Even with that mobile game where they're retelling the story of Dirge, maybe they're just trying to reestablish these hot Dirge boys just so they're more familiar there. But they wouldn't have. Would they do? Would they save Sonon here and imply that Nero's I'll take this body for later and have that whole thing? Just for maybe that mobile retelling of Dirge of Cerberus, where now Sonon's one of the undead boys or whatever the hell's going on in Deep Ground.
I have no idea what you just said.
So they're making that mobile version of Final Fantasy VII where they're remaking all of Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, Before Crisis, Crisis Core, everything is going to be in this weird mobile version. And so with the remake of Dirge, maybe they're planting the seed there for Sonon, because I really hope that it's not you get to Wutai later on in the game and then Sonon comes flying in with Nero's wings bah!
Yeah. That's worst possible scenario for me.
I think it might happen though, man. I really do.
No, I mean then it's gone. Then we're lost. This is the end. This is the end of the deepest dive.
Yeah.
We're not going on. We're not going on if it's going that route. If it's going the Kingdom Hearts route, we're not going. We're not doing it.
Ronnie, did you see the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake? We're in one right now.
I can rub it back.
But I think that you're totally right. That sums up a lot of the tension with this DLC at the end, because my brain is forced to slap together, I think, the best storytelling Final Fantasy VII has ever had, which is elements of the remake with some of the worst storytelling Final Fantasy VII has ever had with Dirge of Cerberus. And like seeing those two in the same room together, it's like, oh God.
Whoa.
It's stressful emotionally. It's just too much.
I wonder if it'll all be sort of gated off as DLC, right? Because it's like you have to kind of you have to take this DLC as like not 100% of people are going to have played it when they play part 2.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a fair assumption. So maybe if there's future DLC, that's where we'll see Sonon. It'll just be all branched off to the side. You know, Yuffie will leave the party for a little while and she'll go find Sonon in DLC or something like that.
I don't think they'd have another piece of DLC for Yuffie though. I think...
No, they probably wouldn't, but they would probably have... I mean, I could see them having actual DLC that kind of ropes back in some tertiary kind of way. And that's actually how I thought of it too, Kyle. Is like, it seems like they're kind of like... They're giving us something that is relatively inconsequential to the story at large, but also something that can kind of like tide us over until the next big release happens.
It's pronounced.
I don't know.
It's pronounced Tidus.
And also, I mean, no spoilers, but I mean, Dirge of Cerberus like is about a very specific character that we haven't met yet, right? Like maybe that's who will get covered in the DLC. That'll be his moment to shine, you know?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. Did you all care about Sonon's sister? Like I like Sonon fine, but I really was not moved by just a character that I just met telling me, hey, by the way, one time I had a sister who died. All right, that seems sad, but I have no emotional investment whatsoever in these sepia flashbacks happening every once in a while.
When she sort of hugs him, right, like with the idea being like, oh, he has passed away and now he's meeting his sister again. Like I thought that was sweet. From Sonon's perspective,
yeah.
You know, like, oh, it's nice that he gets to reunite with his sister, but as a character, the sister is just a plot device. Like she's nothing really in that regard, you know.
It's a stretch for me to care about Sonon, so to take it one step further is like, that was
Sonon's adopted sister,
right? Okay, this is tricky, I guess, without stepping on Final Fantasy VII, but I was interested, speaking of just setting up future things, like how much they're throwing the Cloaked Reunion boys at you in this DLC. I mean, right from the beginning, it's like they're just an army of Reunion boys roaming around Midgar's trash heaps. Reunion Nova. It's like they're really trying to set you up and remind you before you go into the second part of the remake, I think. They're like, hey, by the way, don't forget these tattooed guys are everywhere.
I like that nobody pays them mind either. Like, oh yeah, those guys, they're cool.
Yeah, there's like flipping them a coin. Be like, yeah, I don't have any cash on me. I really don't. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep walking.
No, I'm not having a family reunion. No, you can't come. Just stay away.
Why are they so into family reunions? This is bizarre. But yeah, I do think they're setting it up for the big arc of the second chunk of the remake. But again, we don't want to be too teasy and annoying there. But all Yuffie cares about is they don't have a palm. She's like, oh, no palm. Got to find that Moogle. Got to keep running. And then she finds her way to Sector 7 slums. And God, I'm going to butcher this name. Zhe? It has an interesting pronunciation. Yeah, something like that. I'm sorry.
Gigi.
Nailed it.
Gigi Gabor, and he calls Yuffie. They got a fun little code name for people from Utai. It's W. Really? That's your big slang for the other country? These W's, I don't know, man.
W. Utai.
If we call everybody from Australia A's or something.
right. Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of that old Douglas Adams quote where he said, WWW is the only acronym that takes more syllables to say than the original thing. Anyways, it's time we get to the star of the show. We're talking our new favorite characters. We got Billy Bob and Polk in there holding down the Avalanche fort. The only characters somehow stuck between the world of being an NPC and kind of being a custom character. They're just like this Brundlefly fusion, not quite sure of what they are.
I would be surprised if Billy Bob's actual name was just placeholder name until like until the day
like
before
Billy
release.
Bob was the placeholder name. They're like, well, we'll change that later.
No,
And it's like,
absolutely.
whatever.
Like, oh,
We're stuck here. But we finally get to see like an Avalanche base, which we didn't really get to see. Frustratingly in the remake, we didn't get to see below Seventh Heaven. So like, oh, here's like another Avalanche base just down the street that you kind of get to see. They have a banner in there. That seems cool.
I was also very frustrated.
three shacks down from Seventh Heaven.
Yeah.
They just never talked. It's like, oh, that's that Splinter Cell directly across the street from us. We don't talk about them.
We talk too loud, they can actually hear us.
Bunch of loose cannons over there.
Actually, here's a comment. Actually, we got one. Oh boy, here we go. Joshua Duproy writes in and says, if you try to enter the Seventh Heaven, the Whispers will bar you.
Yeah.
Entry, to which Yuffie responds, he works in mysterious ways. Does this imply God exists in the Final Fantasy VII universe? I think she's talking about Sephiroth, which is obviously the god of Final Fantasy VII. I don't know.
She's talking about the Wu-Tang Clan.
I think she was. Yeah, please, the W's.
Because she did say Wu-Tang.
She did.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Remember
But
that.
I thought that was interesting that they wouldn't let you go in there to see what was happening. It's like, I've got to come up with some reason. I don't know, just like a blast of weird
Yeah.
Right.
fate
Well, the same.
ghouls.
I mean, like it's the same energy that just kind of was in. But that's actually a really good question. I had the same question. It's just like, well, he works in mysterious ways. Like, what is that?
Nomura.
What is that?
Yeah, I think she's just implying, she believes in some sort of deity. Maybe it's a Wu-Tai thing over there. Did you think it was something deeper than that, Ronnie?
No, actually, now that you said that, I thought about the mountain on Wu-Tai.
Which, do you remember what that mountain's called?
I don't.
It's Mount DeChao. Or DeChao, which
like
is
the
the
little
name.
bee?
Which is the name of the nut.
Oh!
Yeah, Charlie Hunter
okay.
submits a comment over on Patreon saying, I laugh every time someone cracks all their teeth on a DeChao bean.
Yeah.
And Preetham Yarlagadda writes in asking, do you guys think you can eat a DeChao nut? Why are they so hard? Are Wu-Taians
could
teeth
do it.
extra hard? Oh, I could do it. Yeah, no doubt about
No,
it.
you can't.
I could do it.
You're saying I
can't.
couldn't eat a
I got
DeChao
strong
nut?
teeth.
Yeah,
0% chance.
Oh, I could absolutely
but-
do it.
I have
Crying like
amazing-
little babies.
Wouldn't.
The part that's amazing in this is they stress that it's not teeth. It's a jaw factor. You need strong jaws,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
that's
shark's
true,
jaws to really.
I feel like teeth are the limiting factor.
Oh
here,
yeah,
though.
they would shatter. But it
Yeah, I
was,
felt like I heard the crunch of teeth. Actually,
but like all the dopey characters, repeatedly trying to eat these, and then even like the super cool as a cucumber ID guys. Hey, here's your fake badges. Ooh, I'll take my little nut. Anime eye. Always good. And he gave her those fake IDs, or as she calls it 1,000 times, fake HIDs. Just, it's like,
I laughed at that. I thought it was good.
Doesn't it bring you above the plate so they're high IDs?
I didn't know if she didn't understand what an ID was,
what?
or she was trying to make a pun. Yeah, but either way, these ninjas are freaking nuts.
I kind of thought that she was saying it as just like she's never heard of what an ID
I
is
thought
before.
that's how I was leaning towards it. Yeah. Ian T. Clark submits a comment over on Patreon saying it was so great to get back to the pre-plate drop Sector 7 slums. That's my favorite version of Sector 7 slums as well.
Yes.
I visited all the old spots and made sure to say hi to Ben, the junk dealer. Thank you. It was very smart for them to have you play through this area of the game again. This made watching the destruction of the plate drop even more devastating. It's a good point, Ian.
It's also really smart to reuse assets entirely. Because when I saw this thing was announced, like instantly I was upset that they were not focusing 100% of their energy on making part 2.
Right.
But then after seeing like this could not have been that hard to make with how much they reused and like how linear chapter 2 was as well. So,
yeah, especially like, I mean, the art assets are a big thing. Like, yeah, it's new environments for a lot of chapter 2 and stuff, but when they're taking kind of some art elements and different mechanics and background stuff from Shinra Tower just to try and make that, I mean, obviously still impossible to pull this off and put the game together. But yeah, I mean, definitely reusing that Sector 7 stuff, and especially giving you some fetch quests in there. It's like, okay, they're being efficient here about how we're making the most of it.
Yep.
Jackson Von.
I'm feeling like I did it wrong, because I was really like, all right, let's go to the next part. Like I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't want to play that board game. I was just like, all right,
blowing my freaking mind right now, Kyle.
You're insane. Jackson Von Heitzma says, I absolutely loved the way that I played this game and not the way Kyle played it. And I love that the original release of Remake made the world feel alive by including recurring characters, and that carries over in Intergrade. When I saw Roche, Kyrie, Johnny, and the Avalanche gang pop up for me to beat in Fort Condor, I lost my S. What a great world they created. Yeah, it was fun to go back and reunite with all those people. Like, even just seeing Avalanche talking, they're talking about like, I can't wait to eat that pizza, Jesse. And I was like, I wish they would have like been talking crap about Cloud or something. Just like, what is with this hair? Like, I feel like there could have been some fun opportunities for them just to like talk about Cloud behind his back or something there.
To be toxic?
Yeah, just be a little snarkier. I think it'd be fun.
That's really weird. The thing that I liked is like when I saw those characters, I had the moment like, oh, there they are. Like there's Jesse. But then with like Barrett and Tifa, like when you saw them, they like almost felt like they were celebrities, like, beyond me.
So you don't want to go near him, yeah.
Getting that tiny little bit of filler about Tifa going to Don Corneo's place.
Yes,
it was those little things that really made me appreciate this. I like that so much.
Because it is just one of those things of like, yeah, why is Tifa in that carriage? Why did this whole thing happen? It's just that quick line of her just being like, I'll look into this Don Corneo thing. And I'm still trying to figure out why exactly, though. Do you think she thought maybe it would bring her closer to Cloud? Or was she just like, Corneo's a creep, and I know that apparently he's causing trouble again, and, Jesse or whoever told her that he was asking or something, that he was stirring trouble, and so that was all we needed just for an explanation?
Yeah, I think just that Corneo was having people like look for them or trying to figure out what they were up to, something like that.
Right.
I was thinking like part of it was just kind of like risky behavior following just like a tragic event where she just like didn't really want to think about what just happened. So you know what? Instead of actually going in and resting, I'm going to do this instead. Yeah. So it was kind of this sort of spontaneous thing.
I guess it's a big emotional ask to have them act as if Cloud died, but it was interesting just that they're all kind of in the camp, or at least telling themselves like, he's fine. Barrett's like, that was a big fall, but I'm sure a church broke his fall. Like, the way they phrase it just doesn't seem like they're convinced he's dead in any way.
Well, I kind of thought about that as more like Barrett is probably not 100% or too convinced that he is alive, but he at least felt the need to provide reassurance to Tifa because he could tell that she was really distraught.
And also probably selfishly, he's like, well, now we need to get on with this mission. Like, we can't be over here moping about this guy going down. Joe Halaska writes in and says, I love the concept that gets heavily explored here in the main Avalanche group. The main Avalanche group from Final Fantasy VII are a splinter cell and are acting in a manner that isn't necessarily consistent with Avalanche's approach on a broader level. The whole stay away from those guys messaging from other characters when you see Barrett and Tifa walking around adds a huge layer of depth from such a subtle moment. Yeah, that is true. Fred DeNovo says, when you first enter Sector 7 in the crowd around the TV, there's a lady who says, I can't help but wonder how big Avalanche actually is. I think we all shared that sentiment. Given the main game, I thought Wutai was the main force of Avalanche, but playing through this, it seems like they're just one of the sects behind the scenes, as the other members that you meet up with aren't from Wutai. They want to improve Midgar. Do you think they continue to dive more into Avalanche in the sequels?
I think they absolutely could, and I think it'd be kind of I'm interested in where it goes. Like, I don't think that would be like lost time if they were to focus a little bit more on Avalanche moving forward.
Yeah, I kind of see it as all that setup of talking about the different sects of Avalanche. I feel like that was just to kind of set up this DLC. Like, I don't really know narratively where they could go from here. Like, it's building it up, but to what end, I guess?
Yeah.
Other than, maybe it'd be interesting to have, technically this Avalanche sect is still operating in Midgar throughout the rest of Final Fantasy VII. Who knows? Omega 3 says, I really like the new sub-story plot they're developing around Wutai and Avalanche. In the Intermission DLC, we get some new bits like what's up with Yuffie's dad and Yuffie clearly having a poor history / mistrust dealing with Avalanche. Yeah, I was a little bit hazy on her history with Avalanche. I thought she made it seem like she was like fighting them back in Wutai. there's some hint of something. I feel like I need to go back and check the dialogue there, but there's something that was a little bit hazy on about exactly what her history is, other than, yeah, she's upset with her father, even though he's a great fighter. Does
something that happens in Wutai get blamed on Avalanche by Shinra, or am I off base there?
I don't know. It's definitely a little hazy. You aren't alone for being confused there, Kyle.
Yeah.
I mean, she seemed kind of excited to go meet with Avalanche, though. Didn't she? Was the one that said, let's go talk to them, right?
Right.
And Sonon was like, nah, let's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I saw it as like her seeing the celebrities that Ronnie and I were seeing, you know?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, Ronnie, what'd you think about Sector 7, exploring it? Anything else stand out in that area?
Just everything to do with turtles. That's a lot of fun here.
Holy Lord, that happy turtle.
Holy Lord, that happy turtle. Also, just, 6 or 7 different renditions of that same song, one being like a post-hardcore death metal. That you're just walking around the warehouse, with the double bass drums. Like, it had a blast with that.
When that little jingle came out of my controller, AIM was like, what the hell was that? That was weird.
This is producer Amy of MinnMax for everyone being confused.
My fiance had this same thing where she's like, what was that? Because she never had heard like a controller speak before.
Actually play a weird little jingle.
Yeah.
It was definitely a lot. I mean, I think this entire DLC, once again, the music team are the MVPs here. Like, they could have reused so much music, but there's so much new music in this DLC. And yeah, okay, we have a bar called the Happy Turtle, and old Snapper himself is really into it. We need a Happy Turtle bar song, and they churn out like 5 different variants. It's just absurd.
It is. That is absurd.
There's a distinct lack of hip hop Chocobo.
Ooh.
I mean, in retrospect, that's on me. I could have played it in the headphones the entire game.
Yeah, it would have helped.
It is on you.
It's definitely
on
you.
me.
Yeah, but that metal cover, which, by the way, Ronnie Barrier writes in and says, first of all, Ronnie's Unite. Second of all, the metal cover of the Turtle jingle for Song of the Year. Look, there's no doubt about that. Third of all,
I legitimately liked it.
It definitely was in that vein of like opening of Final Fantasy X, or my favorite version of the Chocobo 3 theme, which is Final Fantasy 13-2's Chocobo theme, which is called Crazy Chocobo. Do you remember how that one goes, Ronnie?
No.
It's like zero shot he's played 13.
It goes a little something like this. Do you think I can ride that Chocobo? and then at the end of the chorus, it goes, are we in hell? I don't know. Let's go. It is the most absurd
Well, fiddle
song.
is playing, right? Because that was an important part of 13. It was like really good fiddle, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's got it all. Yeah, and I love that they bring back, well, I mean, Cameron Wardlaw here says, well, hang on, there's too many good things. Okay, first of all, Eric Merrill submits a comment saying that I just started my second playthrough on hard mode and changed it to Japanese, and all of the Happy Turtle songs have an English and a Japanese variant.
Awesome. Wow.
Also, he points out, gonna get blind drunk at the Happy Turtle, which I think are lyrics from the Turtle song. As Zach Galoo writes in, says the standout track to me is a Happy Turtle music in general, but I specifically loved hearing "Gonna Get Fully Wrecked at the Happy Turtle" on the metal version of this song.
Now I'm going back to my previous stance. They should have spent more time on part 2 instead of this.
Nope.
I like that 50s variant where it's just like there's so many wild versions, but I definitely heard that one a lot because it's as I was trying to dodge old Marl's coming back, Marley, whatever the hell we called her, and she decided to buy a narcoleptic dog. I don't know exactly what's happening with that stupid stealth dog. I couldn't get past that. Was I an idiot? Did you guys struggle with that too?
I thought the poster was fully around the corner, not
Yes.
right in front of the dog.
Yes, absolutely. I kept trying to go around that corner, and it's like, I don't know what timing you're trying to get me to do here, game, but I guess I have the great music to make up for the dog stealth section.
This was at like 9:30 at night. Like, as I'm trying to sneak past this narcoleptic dog, I could not hate that dog anymore.
And by proxy, now Marl's in the dog house. Joshua Duproy writes in and says, Yuffie's line during the Happy Turtle side mission where she says, my turtle senses are tingling, definitely gave me some Spider Cop vibes from Insomniac Spider-Man. Just like that, the game somehow makes it work. So far, I've found her character surprisingly charming, and I prefer her cheesy one-liners to Cloud's sullen and blasé utterances and responses from the main game. Oh, good. Cameron Wardlaw writes in on Patreon and says, oof. That whole scene in Chapter 1 with Corneo's pervert goons was uncomfortable. That guy licking his lips every 10 seconds while talking to Yuffie and Neo made me want to punch him in the face hard. Well, then you got to attack him with a shuriken. So that seems like pretty good payback for the pervert goon squad.
That's such a, like, I don't know. It's such a cliche of like, let's make this person as evil as possible, as quickly as possible, so you can fight them as quickly as possible and feel good about yourself. It's like a lot of anime does that, you know. Like,
Mortal Kombat storyline.
People in the street for no reason, you know.
And like, it is that weird thing of, how old's Yuffie? Okay, she's 16, I guess, here. And so she's angry about like, hey, I'm pretty hot stuff over here, too. And like, you know, I guess, never mind. But the point,
go on.
I'm just saying Yuffie is not like an unattractive character, but I understand that's weird to say about an underage video game character.
Call him, Grant. Call him.
Shut it down, boys. Shut it down.
No, don't flee the Patreon, please. Please, I need this. But it's such a weird thing for like those characters to be like, get out of here, chop liver, look at Neo. Now here's a character for Don Corneo. Don Corneo wouldn't even blink twice at Yuffie, I'm sure.
It is very odd. I mean, really, you gotta ask the most, like, what's the deal here that you guys have kind of, I don't know, like, not maybe overly sexualized a minor character, and then also in the game you're like, yeah, she's just a kid. Like, what? There's some dissonance there.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of sucks.
Yeah. It kind of sucks.
Not great.
But and then of course the metal Happy Turtle song comes back in. Yeah, when you're fighting these guys, and like it made me think like, you know what? That's right. It's DLC. Like best case scenario for DLC is people pay attention to it. They're able to turn some heads. So like them taking these absurd big swings like that, like what? Let's just write the most absurd metal song and blast it during this Don Corneo fight. It's like, yeah, it's DLC. You gotta do it. Like I understand it's the time to be weird. And
I mean, even if it wasn't DLC, I mean, we still fought a house in an arena in the main game.
That's
too.
right.
I mean, so like it's on par.
Yeah. Chris Martin says, I absolutely loved how they incorporated Yuffie's theme from the original game into the battle music. It was such a good track and really showed how much effort was put into the original music for the DLC. So many times in this DLC that music would hit me, even just like hints of like Wu Tai's theme subtly in there at moments. Obviously Yuffie's theme being a more dynamic one with the combat is great. Even like Fort Condor. Like when they're doing the tutorial of Fort Condor, it's like, okay, got it. And then right when it gets in there and turns the dun, 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 it's like, oh my God, all right, this is actually Fort Condor. We're here. And then like how that builds, like as you're closer to the victory, like the drums really kick in for, I mean, the fact that there's layers and layers of music for the Fort Condor theme is just absurd. They can't phone it in. Kevin Robinson.
Did you guys play a lot of Fort Condor? I like the way it looked, but I was really very severely uninterested in playing it beyond the
I mean, it wasn't as good as the original one, but
the original is like top 3, I think, PlayStation games of all time if you count it as a separate thing. I was, based on the trailer, I saw Fort Condor and I was like, what is this? Is this going to be like some Hearthstone clone that I don't like? And then actually getting into it, it's like, oh, it's so much more like the original Fort Condor than I expected. It's so it's so stupid simple that I actually kind of enjoyed my time with it.
In the Grand Pantheon, it's triple triad is through the ceiling of the room I'm in, and then there's the new Fort Condor game.
Okay.
As far as Final Fantasy mini games, because triad is top tier.
Right.
Triad is top tier, but anytime that the weird wonky rule variants started showing up, that's when I don't know, it kind of broke my brain.
I mean,
which one is that from? On Triad, what is that?
That's from 8. It's the card game.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, there's pages dedicated to trying to get the perfect the rule sets, because as you mentioned, there's like elemental stuff and weird regional rules for Triad, but that's a whole separate podcast. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Stephen K submits a comment on Patreon saying, "Why was Fort Krondor fun? I got into it for the reward, but just went through the whole quest immediately. I didn't anticipate that." Well, there we go, Stephen. I'm glad it worked for you. And then Brian Paradise says, "I'm really liking Fort Condor. I think it's amazing they built this great simple MOBA in the middle of DLC. I haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII since it released on PlayStation 1, so I have no memory of that original minigame. And either way, I got hooked right away." Surprising amount of love coming in. Even Troy Ellison writes in saying the rock, paper, scissors style strategy made it easy to pick up, but challenging when facing certain opponents. I never want to think about Grandmaster Chadley ever again, he says.
That's my alt account, actually.
I did not get to Chadley. Did you face this brutal boy?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Hang on. Are you a fake ass gamer boy here? What are you talking about?
I didn't beat Wedge in Fort Condor.
You didn't beat Wedge?
He was tough. He was challenging. I wanted to give him the big W.
Him and his army of cats just brought you
I was
down.
going to say, he had a cat on his lap.
Wait, that's amazing. You actually went through it? You took down the Chadley, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
Check out his eyes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I did.
Did you enjoy Fort Condor, Ronnie?
Surely no more. Yeah, I did. It was like one of those things. We'll call it the kind of like the Red Dead Redemption kind of complex. I guess that's just kind of a thing now, where it's like you kind of have a deadline to get done, and I wanted to do the full Fort Condor experience. I wanted it, so I think like there was a sense of urgency that just like I gotta kind of nail this because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. At the same time, like anything where there's just like you collect more powerful things after defeating, and going back to the Mr. Turtle dude, grabbing some more powerful units and like using those, like that whole hook is a lot of fun. And there were times where I'm just like, I'm reading what they're doing. Like I'm like kind of waiting to see like, what are they putting down? And then countering that and playing that way was just like, actually, this is kind of fun. And also it's like 2 minutes.
Right. I think we all like MOBAs now. I think that's kind of the lesson.
Crap.
If they don't introduce that into part 2, I'm going to be very upset.
Well,
they won't.
What I'm trying to figure out, so is there still a real life Fort Condor that's under attack and just they've turned that into a game? Or do you think Fort Condor is just not going to be a thing anymore? Or will everybody
People stop paying attention?
I mean, will everybody there be obsessed with the board game?
I'm hoping both, that it exists and this continues on.
Okay, yeah. Troy Ellison writes in and says, my strategy by the end focused on overwhelming the opponent with how many troops I can place using the barracks, pushing as far as I could on the borderline and saving once every couple troop cycles for the almighty helicopter unit. I hope to see this game return in future installments or its own spin-off game like Gwent. I can see them trying to make a mobile version or something if they get good feedback about it.
I mean, if I could crush Ron in a game of Fort Condor, that would
not gonna happen.
That would bring me a lot of joy.
I ran into situations where my Phoenix statue was just getting annihilated, and I was trying to like drop units next to it to be like, hey guys, fight this helicopter in the sky, and they would just like start marching away. It's like, I understand it's too much maybe control for something this simple to have like, okay, now attack this unit, but I had times where I'm like, why are you walking past? I want you to stop and attack this unit, otherwise it's just right on the home stretch.
I mean, some were ground and some were air only and some were hybrid units too, so it might have just been the wrong unit type in there.
Yeah, I guess that could be. I would think it was an arrow guy that was put next to that whole thing, but
I would have even though if it was an arrow guy, it still has an identity of either like it can attack ground troops, the towers themselves, and flying troops. So you probably put something down that was just not able to hit air, and so it just walks past it.
That could be. Clemens Zobel writes in and says, best Fort Condor piece was the guard dog. Used that to push the front line against Chadley and spam low-cost units next to his towers, completely ignoring defense. I got so sick of his smack talk.
That was a good game. You did really well.
I was kind of excited when I first saw Chadley in the slums and walked by him, and he did not talk. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess we just get to see him, but all right, no more Chadley. Yeah. But oh boy, is there more Chadley. There's an uncomfortable amount of Chadley. Did you guys see the big Chadley finale scene where he was interacting with Weiss's VR simulation and all that nonsense?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah.
Okay, Grant, did you fight Weiss?
I did not.
Okay.
Because you have to go into the main game to the VR simulator, right?
Yeah, and I didn't have a save there, but I guess that wouldn't even have worked. So you had to go from chapter selection.
We could chapter select, right? Yeah.
But even then, I think you still have to run into Shinra headquarters in order to get to that Shadley VR simulation in there.
So my save is on my PS4, and I don't think I transferred anything over.
Okay. Yeah, the transfer process
You
was...
You get all the trophies instantly. You sit there for like 5 minutes and you just see trophies pop for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. The transfer process was kind of annoying. So if you fight Weiss in the VR simulation, like there's a whole cutscene of like Shadley preparing him, and it's like Weiss being like, I am so powerful, I need to hunt and kill something, and Shadley being like, oh, no, you're just a simulation, and he's kind of rejecting that he's just a simulation and all that fun stuff, but then you kill him and then he disappears.
I did look at the trophy list when I was playing, though, and at the time I was playing, 0.2% people had beaten Weiss. I think it was like a...
Really?
Wow.
It was a super low number, so...
Oh, wow. Did you guys beat Ramu?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Kevin Robinson writes in and says, can we talk about how amazing the music is in the runaround sequence where you're chasing after Zishay? I'm sorry, I forget. He says the Cowboy Bebop inspired jazz track is probably my new favorite piece of Final Fantasy music. It is freaking sweet.
I was just watching a stream of somebody playing that before jumping into this, and that's right where they were at. And it's like, wow. In the moment, I didn't notice it as much, but this really hits.
It's crazy. And there's like several, there's several stages to it. Like eventually just the drums become so overwhelming. It's just like a whiplash song. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like it didn't really fit with like the rest of the soundtrack, but like not a complaint. Just like, it just felt out of place, but in a way that I appreciated that really set Yuffie apart, you know?
Yeah. And
it's I associate it with her now.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Is like, I guess the jazz components of the soundtrack are for Yuffie, but her theme isn't really jazz inspired. So I kind of took it as just maybe the reins were a little bit further off for the composers. And it's like, what kind of music would you like to make? And they're like, okay, I want a very 70s drum heavy chase sequence. Yeah, it's so good. And then there's the big wild animated opening where she finally, after all this time, takes off that beautiful Moogle cloak and reveals her true form, which that cloak... Ronnie, you like that cloak?
It was the worst part of the game, man.
just because like the janky edges every once in a while?
Yeah, I mean, like, but I didn't know that she would ever take it off. There's a part of me that just kind of thought like maybe this is just like how she's gonna look like the whole time, and it was just that little like just thing that was going on, and I don't know if everybody had that, but like for me, it was constantly just twitching out on her shoulder, and I just kind of thought like I don't know how somebody could release the game like this.
Well, plot physics are very hard.
Either it didn't happen for me, or I'm just blind and dumb.
It must have. Okay.
So I didn't notice that bad luck.
I didn't notice any of that.
Okay, well then it was purely just me.
Yeah, I hope you threw that PS5 away because I think it's basically unusable at this point. No, I definitely saw it. Yeah, I saw it come through every once in a while, but they had to build up. Got to have that big reveal. I thought they were going to save it until like chapter 2. That's when she's going to have the big reveal. But nope, it's right before the Gigantopede fight, I think was the name of that dude. Dennis M. writes in about the end of chapter 1, I believe, saying, just like in the original game, he liked the fact that Yuffie gets motion sick. Like when she's in the train, she's all sick, which is a fun nod.
Wait, real quick. Her arm. She has like the thing that you wear so that hawks can land on your arm.
Oh no.
Pull it.
Yeah. Yes, he asked the question you guys.
What is that? What's going on there? Why is she wearing that?
Yeah, Grant, take it away.
I didn't want to spoil her Master Falconer scene, Bam.
Best FMV.
I think she's just got a eclectic fashion sense.
Yeah, she's trained the falcons to fly in and button her pants. And then fly away again.
Work in progress.
And steal materia, all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, they're really fun. Yeah, there's no explanation that I know of. It's like maybe just like with her weapon, sometimes she needs like extra protection for it. Like it's coming in too fast.
Maybe it was like a shield or something. But
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
I don't think it even looked bad necessarily or anything. But it's very much Final Fantasy characters just insisting on wearing too many things with belts on them. But like,
right.
It just stood out to me as like, oh, okay, she has a big arm thing. All right, cool.
But then there was a moment where she was deflecting bullets, and she used the
shuriken
weapon.
Right.
I have a fundamental like misunderstanding of what bullets are in this game. Like I just will not understand if they're a threat or not. Like it will never make sense to me.
You got to know that grenades are pretty powerful though.
It's tough to keep track of. Okay, this stab kills people. This stab is 17 off the HP. I mean, it's video game nonsense at some point. I remember you hated the fact that President Shinra had that gun, and everyone's like, "Oh crap, this character's got a gun." And the remake was like, "What?"
And Barrett can't just lift his arm up like.
It's so silly.
Still frustrating. Yeah. Still don't love the end of 7, but that's another discussion that we've already had.
No one
Go
does.
check out the Deepest Dive.
So Sonon and Big Z Boy, they reunite. They got their cool special handshake, and I do like. There's a couple layers of Sonon I like. I like him calling Yuffie boss throughout the game. And then I like that idea that he's kind of drinking the Midgar Kool-Aid, that he went on like a scouting mission and now he's just like whoring it up in the slums. Like it seems like he's just all over the place, boozing and really having a good time, which is kind of fun. That he like this guy from Utai is like, yeah, I know there are enemies, but there's a lot of really cool bars around here. So
he's gone from W to M. He's a pure Midgar boy now.
Yeah, that's right. King Prometheus writes in and asks, what part of the DLC did you all have the most trouble with? I died the most to the single Wrathhound in Chapter 1 you run into while chasing your boy. I'm pretty sure...
I know exactly what he's talking about.
I honestly had that same problem. He said, I'm pretty sure I was missing something because I don't think that was meant to be that much of an impediment. I think that was also just a time where it's like, oh, that's right. Okay, I don't think this DLC is challenging overall, but I need to reacquaint myself with how this works. Even simple stuff like, oh, that's right, I can use items outside of combat. I forgot about for a couple fights there.
Yeah, that was kind of the reintroduction to just like, oh, maybe I should try to stagger. Maybe I should actually assess and figure out what the weakness is. Like, just kind of get yourself refamiliarized with those mechanics.
Sleeping dog for me was the biggest roadblock.
That is true. That SOP sleeping dog.
Yeah.
That bird, honestly, also took me out once in that same section where you're kind of going through the slums, which I'm not the proudest of. There's a giant bird thing.
What? The thing that she was just like, no, be quiet, and she's like, whoa, a mouse.
Right. Remember that knee slapper?
Whoa.
Also, that scene later on where she's like, the guards are slowly walking away, and then there's just that dumb moment where she runs in there and she's like, whoa, and does like the Yuffie slide, and then someone's like, oh, what am I gonna do with you? It's like, wait, what was she even trying to do there? There were guards just politely walking away. You just wanted to run out?
Just walk, yeah.
They dropped something.
Here's my thing, and tell me if this is too persnickety, please. But at some point with all like the physical comedy with Yuffie, I just think if you focus tested it, not a single person would ever smile or laugh at like these big pratfalls and stuff. Like, I think there's funny, silly moments in this DLC, but her just being like, whoa, all that. Do you think anybody playing this game is laughing out loud during those scenes?
In Japan?
Yes. Anywhere.
It makes me happy.
It does.
But it's not like not laughing at it at all. It's not funny. But it doesn't upset me.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah.
That's what they're going for?
I appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah. And what was your take on the very opening cutscene when she fell off the top? And then somehow for a second, her Moogle cloak turned into like a wingsuit. And like she kind of like flew it down. Like I watched that scene several times trying to figure out what's going on there. Look, these are
Breath of the Wild. Here we go.
One of the few notes I took is Yuffie can fall 80 feet now. Cool.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone's getting more to when they want to be. Matt writes in, you know what this guy's always going on about, Ronnie? Matt, thanks for your support on Patreon, Matt. Matt says
and you lost him.
Yep. Crap. The DLC feels so much better to move around in, especially the climbing and blue arrow elements. Do you have any hope that the movement will carry over to part 2, or will it be character specific? In the main game, climbing the church ceiling and swinging from lights in Shinra HQ were pretty bad, but climbing and running on the security gates in Intermission is a noticeable improvement. I think that's a great point, Matt.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is going to be character specific. Like, I think it's like one of those things where, yeah, she's a ninja. Like, she should be able to navigate those kind of like acrobatics pretty well. That being said, like the triangle move where you'd like triangle and then she'd swing up, stand, and then launch herself off. That was 10 out of 10 cool. But it would also be like, I think like if ever a time that you were playing as Barrett, like he should, I don't know, I would imagine there's going to be a moment where he's just be like, this is clumsy as all hell by design.
Right. He's designed to be in a dark labyrinth underground shooting boxes that are too high. That's like Barrett's,
right.
really primo stuff here. But yeah, I think you're right. Like having that wall running ability is probably going to be pretty character specific, but I think it's a good sign of at least where they're going gameplay wise, just to try and shake it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Bradward writes in and says, I never played the original and really loved the remake first and foremost for the combat feel and systems. They're so much fun. And Yuffie is easily the best playing character so far for me. They equip her with so many tools. She can close large distances on enemies quickly for melee or just attack from afar with ranged, and can combo between the two, and the ability to add elemental effects to her weapon is quite powerful. Turns out she's super fun to play. I did not expect it, and I feel like just the animation, she's so snappy. It's like they removed several frames of animation. Like when you're seeing her do these attacks, it's just like bam, 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 amazing pose, and it just feels so punchy and good. Probably partly because of rumble in the controller as well, but I thought the combat was great.
But also, I wonder if it is also part and parcel of just like it being at 60 FPS now, and it just feels a little bit more snappy. I don't know.
It could be, yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed that action of throwing, the boomerang.
Yeah.
And then essentially kind of like marking an enemy with your boomerang and then throwing a bunch of like elemental stuff at him. Like that action was just fun.
Yeah.
And it's still been fun at 30 frames per second.
For sure. But I was so confused by that. I was like, this is such a weird specific thing. How creative. Like that's such a weird idea to throw the shuriken and then especially add the elemental effects and then just hit it and it'll keep hitting them. But a lot of people wrote in about something. Beetlehorn says, I have to say I really dig how 7 Remake pays respect to other Final Fantasy games. I first noticed this last year when Hell House uses a move called Heavensward, which is the Final Fantasy 14 expansion. And he said, the turning moment for me, though, is realizing that Yuffie plays exactly like a ninja in Final Fantasy 14, using ranged jujitsu in between the physical moves. And the symbols for the... He says jutsus. I assume he means jiu-jitsu? Maybe not. I don't know. Are the same as in 14. Ninja consistency hype and a nice nod for 14 fans.
Awesome.
Yeah, a couple other people wrote about that, but I love that idea. That I'm sorry I didn't play 14 and never play as a ninja to understand that that's where they're pulling all this stuff from, but I'm glad that it feels so snappy. Armando Gomez writes in, hang on. What does this say? He says, Roche. Okay, easy. I really enjoyed how Final Fantasy VII Remake built upon the combat system 15 had going. This DLC also uses more of 15 by using synergizing, specifically the combining of abilities. What did y'all think about this addition to the combat system and how it'll impact the next parts?
It was awesome. I liked holding that trigger down to just like get basically cooler animations, you know what I mean? And like, I never really got a full handle on like exactly, I was never able to really use it tactically. I was mostly just kind of like, it's like, oh, they're synergized. Okay, I guess I can use that double attack now. Like I never really understood how I was achieving that, but like, it was cool to pull off,
Yeah, it changed some of the skills too. Like if you're synergized and you use Yuffie's Windstorm, Sona would just pick her up and like spin her around versus a shuriken doing stuff.
And they do a lot more damage too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think they're totally right that that's definitely them teasing more synergy and more interacting and stuff, I think, for the future of the remake. So I'm all for it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
I really think this is, I'm still like an old school turn-based guy. Like given the choice, I really like the classic stuff, but as it stands for modern Final Fantasy games, like this feels like the culmination of the best elements of combat. And that carried through in this DLC too. Like the remake just nailed it. I have so much fun, and it makes it much more interactive too. They did a great job.
So it's funny that you said, because I also had, like, I think I said out loud, like yesterday, like finally I'm like, I think this is the first time that I actually might prefer this over turn-based games, like old RPGs. Like, it feels like they've gotten to the point where they've honed it enough where it's engaging. It's both like, tactically engaging, but also like action focused. And it marries those two things in a way that feels more refined than it ever has.
Yeah. And especially like when one of the big complaints about remake was the aerial combat with Cloud is a little iffy. When that Drake is flying, it's a little bit dodgy. But now with Yuffie, it just takes care of that. Where it's like, all right, throw the shuriken and now just hit square and I'm going to go to town on that thing.
Yeah.
The only problem with combat is, was I doing something wrong? Because I heard Yuffie say, float like a chocobo, about 35 times. And I only heard her say, stab like a tonberry once. Like, I'm like, am I setting up part one of something and then not going through with it? Does anybody have any insight into her Muhammad Ali obsession?
It might have been the throw and then dash combo where you would throw it and then hit triangle again to dash right to an enemy.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
That could be. Wriggles writes in and says, hello, Roche's Red Riders. Hi, Wriggles. We're here for you. As probably the only person who paid for the extra Cackstar weapon DLC, I really enjoy the unique ability you learned from it. Cackstar Caper has Yuffie's weapon running around the battlefield like a cactar hitting enemies. The weapon itself has a build focused on luck as well, if you're into that sort of thing. And he says, I'm also the guy who bought 10 Butterfingers to get the exclusive DLC for the original game last year. Laughed at myself for doing so when you could just get it for free on the PS5. The pre-order summons are also free. Yeah, but those Butterfingers are probably delicious, Wriggles. I mean,
yeah. I saw that cactar thing on my home screen and I thought, I didn't click on it. I was like, what the hell is this thing going to do for me? What is this even?
It's going to run around. It's cute.
It's half the cost of the DLC. It's like $10, right?
That's absurd.
It's crazy how much it costs.
I thought it was just going to be like a dynamic background or something. I just missed it.
And people will pay it. Tanner Hoisington says, I love the DLC. Did you all feel uncompelled to spend time min-maxing gear/materia for a short DLC? Surely it doesn't transfer. Yeah.
There were some of those choices where it's just like you would get this materia like kind of later in the game and it would be at level 1. And they'd also give you like, hey, like check out, you have like AP up materia and you're thinking, hey, would I do this?
Right.
A little confusing.
Yeah, it's I like it, but it's an interesting idea of compacting all of RPG progression into DLC, where it's like, okay, we're starting out with potions, and okay, now at hour 1:45-minute mark, now high potions are now irrelevant. Like it just progresses and speeds through all that stuff in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found myself not really caring too much about builds. I'm like, okay, the fights aren't brutally hard, so I'll scope it as I see fit here. Hamza R writes in and says, I enjoyed how playful Square was getting with all the cutscenes, like Yuffie's flourish before the Gigantipede boss and the cuts to NPCs eating DeChow beans. I'm looking forward to the next game or DLC having similar lighthearted moments, but I have a question. How did you build Yuffie and so on? Did you care about building for physical or magic attacks, or you just pick the coolest looking weapon and put your best materia into it? That was basically it. I still cared about learning the abilities.
Whatever had the most materia slots was basically what I picked,
Yeah.
All physical all day.
Really?
Yeah.
But the nice thing here...
Yeah, I did set Sonon to just focus on physical attacks and I leveled him up automatically,
Yeah, but it's so nice too to have like the elemental effect for Yuffie's physical attack. And just like, okay, do a quick assess to start every battle, see what they're weak to, and then I'm just going to nail that and it feels like I'm a superstar.
Oh, I did like that. There was a robot enemy that exposes its core. And if you assess it, it says like you can steal the core. And so you do the action of steal and you take the core and it makes the fight so much easier. I was like, oh, that was cool. Like I'm happy I read the assess and I'm happy that like there is a little bit of specific strategy for this robot enemy. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I broke cannon and I immediately got the steel materia out of there. I'm like, I know Yuffie should be the thief, but I'm not going to really use it that much, especially for like the little DLC. But you're right, that was a big moment, huge moment.
Shout out to Final Fantasy VII for actually making assess materia or just like the assess skill actually something that I equip every time.
Yeah, it's huge. Adam Hayes writes in over on Patreon and said, I use both characters starting weapons for the entire DLC. They just seem the most useful. I never felt the need to change it up. Do y'all stick with the starters or prefer the alternate weapons? I switched it up, but then I always feel bad in cutscenes when I see Yuffie not using her standard weapon. Where it's like, it's just this funky looking weird thing now.
Her third one, actually, I thought looked pretty cool.
Yeah, the big spirally one.
Yep.
I did starter for Yuffie and the second staff you find for Sonon.
There we go.
I don't know the name, but
Claudia writes in and says, I'm kind of bummed that one of the boss fights is locked behind hard mode. I want to do the fight, but I kind of suck at the game and hard mode seems stressful. Yeah, I wanted to see what Weiss was up to, but YouTube's pretty good for just seeing that little snippet if you're curious just about what it looks like to fight him, which, I think is interesting. Ronnie, Chapter 2. We're going there. We're climbing Shinra headquarters. We're back home. What stood out to you, baby?
Let's see. Now, just remind me, where did Chapter 2 start? What did it look like?
Starts with them going to Shinra headquarters. We're back in the tower, baby. Going back home.
We're in an elevator with the woman in the red dress.
It's a lot of Scarlet. Yeah, lots of Scarlet.
They kind of just blast through a bunch of guards and reporters and stuff too, and they're in. It takes 10 seconds to get in there.
So that was, thank you for saying that, because that was the kind of remarkable thing for me is wait a second, how did they get from point A to point B? They just entered in and now they're hanging out with the CEO's mistress just within a minute and a half.
High D's.
We get the high D's. I didn't know that those high D's went so high. It was
it's in the name.
It was.
They're ninjas, Ronnie. They're really good. They're showing their worth here.
But also, it's just Scarlet coming out with the two guards and the only other two people in the elevator. They're just sort of
it seems like it'd be so easy for them to go undercover as not somebody so identifiable from Wutai. Why are you just out and about flaunting your Wutai-ness? It seems like just put on a shirt, anything else, and no one will be like, hey, wait a minute, what's with this character over here?
Just handing out chow beans to Scarlet in the elevator.
But I love the idea of Scarlet. She's with two people going to an elevator and she's still just all bravado. She's still just walking to the other person. Does she ever give it a rest? Or is she just constantly surrounded by men crawling on all fours and she just has to be this over the top operatic character?
Yeah. She actually disappears when no one's looking at her.
Oh, really? My God. Oh, this is crucial. Ludo, watching us at the Backstage Pass, watching us live at the $10 tier, says, oh no, we left Chapter 1 and no one talked about Stamp. I mean, there are two kids in Sector 7 that were singing the Stamp song, which we all know and love, Grant, and it's unforgettable. Goes a little something like... Bow, wow, wow. Bow, wow.
You could have grilled me for hours with various torture devices and I would have come up with nothing.
Turtles!
All I can remember is Hip Hop Chocobo. I'm sorry.
Okay, number one track. That's fine. Joe Dean writes in and says, first off...
No, hang on. What? We'll go over. You would go into the little, kids... hangout space with the teacher, and she was telling a story about Opuchi.
I did not see that.
What? Really?
No, that's what Ludo's talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the one thing I caught off to the side was, she was explaining Stamp to a group of kids.
Oh, that's adorable. Damn it. I missed some good Stamp content. I thought it was just the kids singing.
Yeah, it was a kid's story. It was fun.
That sounds very cute. Jodine writes in, he says, first of all, Roche. Oh. Now that that's out of the way, it took me some time to relearn the controls, and then even after that, figure out how to best to use Yuffie, but once I started to get the hang of it, I really enjoyed Intermission. Until, in Chapter 2, when I came across that dang box-busting training course, I must have done the soldier training level for almost an hour until I got the perfect score. It really made me mad that Yuffie couldn't just step on those elevated platforms to attack the 1,500 boxes. Did this cause any frustration for any of you?
I played it once and was satisfied.
I was about the same way, yeah. I did better than I expected the first time around. I was like, all right, there we go.
Played 3 times. I did played the first two, got it, and then the third one, I was like 7,000 points off, and I'm like, this is not happening.
So was that at the training level or the soldier level? Because there's 6 levels. There's 6 objectives total.
Oh, wow. No, that was the training level. Yeah.
Okay. Because I gave up on the soldier one after hitting like 90% of the achieve score, but I spent an hour in there. So.
Oh my God.
You remember like what was the reward for the
some bullshit material that you weren't going to use? So.
Sign me up.
Okay.
But there is a trophy involved, so you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, all that stuff definitely just reminded me that like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be in the gold saucer when we get to that in the remake. It's going to be so many destroy these boxes. They're just going to repurpose all of these little elements they already have built out here.
One last note on that. There is a weapon you're supposed to grab in the chase sequence during that little jazz musical number.
Yeah.
So I looked it up after my failures. And they're like, you need this weapon that you can't miss, which I did miss.
Oh.
There's a cluster of these silver big boxes that can only be destroyed with one attack by this weapon. So I legit could not have done it if I spent all day there. So
No.
that was good to know.
You look it up.
I didn't. Okay.
It's interesting that Yuffie can't use her shuriken just around the environment. Like if she sees the boxes with triangle, you can still attack that there. But if you just do like normally the attack move, then Cloud would swing his sword. Like for Yuffie, she just does the kick just to try and contain it a little bit more. But that's the main thing I learned about Yuffie is that she really loves hitting switches with her shuriken. That's kind of like her main thing. Mm-hmm. Jacob Geller writes in, dear friend of the show. He says, hey, what was up with that part where you're on the conveyor belt? You just have to throw your weapon at boxes? Was that fun? Did I enjoy it? I don't know. It might be the most obvious padding I've seen in the game for a long time. Oh, it's not padding because you're on a conveyor belt. You're making progress. It's very clear.
You're sticking it to the man, too.
Yeah, they pitch it as like sticking it to the man, kill his boxes.
You're bringing Big Shinra down one box at a time.
Losing thousands of gil.
That's right. So many high potions too.
Yeah, I like the idea of her just going to town on these boxes. Meanwhile, Sonan's just like, sweet Jesus, what have I signed myself up for? Just like standing there. Yeah, she just cannot stop attacking boxes.
You got him good there, boss. You did it.
Boy, no one.
She missed one.
It made me laugh too. Like later on, after you defeat Scarlet in her mech, like in that arena. Then Scarlet is just standing there in that arena and no prompt to take her out, to throw a shuriken at her neck or anything. But what you can do is go around and take out all the boxes surrounding her in that arena. It's like, I did it, but I just felt like a very huge narrative disconnect about Yuffie just being like, great, mission accomplished. Now for these boxes. Meanwhile, like enemy number 1 is just tapping her toe standing there. But yeah, Jacob Geller, that was fun to be on that conveyor belt. We all enjoyed sticking it to the man.
The answer is it was good.
Yeah, it was really good, and we liked it a lot. Starkiller writes in over on Patreon, and he said, Yuffie did her quick little punches animation that she did all the time in the original, and it made me very happy. This is a 10 out of 10.
Agree.
Yes.
I wonder if her and Barrett are going to chat about that song that they both inexplicably know and sometimes sing after they defeat enemies.
Okay.
They're going to explain where they heard that.
I would love that if that was just like a weird conversation that you can just like fall upon in the third game. It's like, by the way, how'd you hear that song?
Barrett's like, oh, you sing that too, huh? Cool.
I thought I made it up.
Yeah, they really got the message that people liked that when Barrett sang it in 7 Remake, because like they expanded it by Yuffie starting the whole DLC by her singing her own theme. And then later on, Barrett also sings the Chocobo theme, where it's like, man, everyone just knows all the Final Fantasy music. I don't know why they're not singing the Metal Happy Turtle music constantly. Like that should be the new default.
The victory music is a ringtone in the movie, right? It's like Tifa's cell phone sings the... it's in the world somehow. They know about it somehow.
That's true. Everyone's talking about it. It's fun to see Yuffie and Scarlet interact. It's fun to see like this animosity building up here. I think Scarlet's fun. I think she looks really good. Like there's a close-up of her lips where I think visually I was the most impressed. I'm not being a pervert, but there was like a close-up of her lips where I was like, God, it's got like some good PS5
where are you going
moisture.
with this, man?
Look, yes, I kissed the screen, and if that's a crime, then take me off the internet. You got me.
Take him off.
It's two strikes there, buddy.
Oh, Christ.
Let's get that third. I think that was it's a fun little thing about just like, well, who's going to play opposite of Yuffie here? Scarlet is kind of like a fun choice. Yeah,
and she didn't get that much time in 7 Remake, so it's fun to see her bragging about how many people they're going to kill when they drop that plate. Which, by the way, like replaying that cutscene from 7 Remake, it's so silly and over the top. Like, come on, Reeve, look alive. You've got to kill 50,000 people every once in a while if you're running a company. It's like, what the
cowardice is showing.
I know. It's like, how evil do these guys need to be? Sweet Jesus. Danielle Van Pelt writes in and says, quote, "They must be ninjas, teenage ninjas."
I know.
Is it me or just a coincidence that teenage ninja was used to describe Yuffie by Scarlet, then Sonon described her as a mutant? Oh, and there's that turtle quest. With that, I think it's safe to assume that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will be playable in part 2. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Danielle.
Well, Final Fantasy 15 is a Ninja Turtle game. I've talked about this before. The 4 protagonists each represent one of the Ninja Turtles. So
go on.
It's not an accident.
Which are which? The floor is yours, Kyle. Break it down. What do
you have 5 minutes.
I don't remember all their names, but Glasses guy is Donatello. Blondie photo guy is Michelangelo. Gruff guy is Raphael, and then the leader is Leonardo, whose name I can't remember. The guy from Soul Calibur. Tekken?
Oh, you're talking about those characters from Monster of the Deep?
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Oh,
okay. Fishing game?
Hold on.
Fishing?
Let me think about this. I played this game. Is it Ignis?
Yep.
Prompto?
Yep.
Gladius? And
the biggie.
F.
Prince F.
It was an F.
I got nothing.
I don't know. I have no clue.
Noctis. There we go.
Oh my God. I would not. You could have given me 3 hours. I would have just said the Prince.
Big Prince himself. Yarrow writes in over on Patreon and says, Kyle, what are you doing?
I was getting something by my feet.
Oh,
a fidget toy.
Was it your toe? Is that a fun fidget toy?
Yeah, but I worried sometimes that it makes noise when I press it, so I need to find a silent fidget toy to use.
I recommend this ball. It sounds bad. Ronnie has a tape measure for. It's interesting. Yara writes and says the dichotomy between Yuffie and Sonon. Grant has a phone. And everybody's got their own little fidget toy. That's interesting. Everybody in the comments, let us know what your fidget toy is, please. Thanks. Yara writes in and says the dichotomy between Yuffie and Sonon was the biggest standout in this entire game. I got a similar feel to the relationship between Cloud and Aerith, but this time you play as the goofy one. Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
The way their relationship grows so quickly over these 2 chapters is incredible. Early on in chapter 2, they reach a ladder after defeating Scarlet's bots, and Yuffie says, "How do you feel about giving me a boost?" To which Sonon replies in an unenthused tone, "Ecstatic." To see them become closer through Sonon, comparing Yuffie to his sister, leading to him giving his life for her as recompense for heartbreak, was heartbreaking and so well done. Sorry I butchered that, but good points there, Yarrow.
I did appreciate his instant, like calling her the boss, and like he had instant respect for her. Like I appreciated that, because it's so often those sort of characters are like, you got to earn my respect, and then there's they do over the course of the game. But I like that the starting point was respect, which I appreciated.
Yeah, it's cool to have like a buddy comedy in the world of Final Fantasy VII. I feel like they pulled it off pretty well. But you think it would have started with them not respecting each other, and then that's where it grows. So to start out from him just being this weird kind of begrudging, I don't know, the father stuff. There's some interesting dynamics there about him just being trained by Yuffie's dad and trying to nudge that every once in a while. So there's still dynamics there, even if it's not the classic, like, I don't like you and you don't like me, Yuffie, but we're stuck together as these ninjas from Mutai.
And that's what I kind of with Kyle there. It's like, I also think it makes him instantly more likable if he just like goes along with Yuffie. Like, rather than being this, guy that's playing opposite of Yuffie, and they're just like, you're kind of watching this thing unfold. I like them setting their attention elsewhere.
Yeah, and I like their big bonding scene in chapter 2. Then is like them just in the Shinra headquarters, kind of factory looking place, and they just like sit back and chew a couple sensu beans together. Where there's like, it's that scene where there's like popping those beans. They can't stop thinking about them beans.
But that's like one of those kind of great moments where like she's losing her cool and like he just kind of has the answers. It's just because he is actually pretty much in control.
Right. And then
the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then she calms him down. There's that scene where she's like, Sonon, calm down, calm down.
Yeah.
I liked the scene too. I think this is the funniest moment for me from Yuffie. There's a scene where the security doors open in this room in the Shinra headquarters, and like a couple Magia troopers walk through the door, and it's just like this big clunky, like very 90s looking armor. And then Yuffie just said, "We're here for materia, not these dorks." All right, Yuffie, you got me calling these stupid bulky guys dorks. And then, you fight Scarlet. The Scarlet Mare, I believe is what they call that big bad robot. And again, the music is just amazing. I can't tell if it's a new variant of the boss theme or just I haven't heard it in this way, but it's just the drums are very intense. It's just incredible. But I was reminded of my least favorite thing, which we talked about a lot in the deepest dive for the base game, of it's so frustrating when I'm doing a limit break or doing my big move, especially the synergy move, and then you happen to hit him at, this is the 50% health cutscene, and it just interrupts it. It's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. To the point where I was actually accounting for that.
Really? Just knowing like if I'm around that level of health, I know it's going to be a cutscene here?
Yeah, if you have a limit break and you're at like 56% health, like you might as well just play the safe route and just like wait till it gets a little bit below half.
Yeah, that's smart.
This limit breaks are so finite too. It really sucks wasting one of those things.
I liked the sort of the upgrade path for the robot too. I thought that was fun when she would like back off, stick her hands in the boxes and come back with like, I don't even remember what it was, but like one time a sword and a shield. Like I thought that was cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think that
Mako cannons and swords. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Even you had that moment. She's like, how many of those do you got? This is a good moment.
Would you, Ronnie, as the world's biggest fan of Lord of the Rings, please look forward to our Patreon exclusive Lord of the Rings commentary track, which we're going to be recording whenever the new studio gets ready. I know we've been late on this one, but sorry, it was a series of vacations, then E3. Thank you for your patience, everybody. The point is, Ronnie, as the world's biggest Lord of the Rings fan, what was your read on Yuffie constantly calling materia her precious? Too much or just enough?
Just enough.
Just enough, ladies and gentlemen. There it is.
Just enough.
Verdict's in.
Yep.
Let's see. So you defeat Scarlet, and it turns out, we should have known this from the original game, that on her thigh, she has a button which activates the deep ground troop. And all hell is set loose, because now these boys are coming out to play. We got the Dirge Squad.
Whoever they are.
What do you mean?
No one knows.
We got
Even she's like, push this button on my hip. We'll see what happens. I've never pressed it. I don't know.
So these folks are back. Andrew Vala writes in and says, fans of the original Final Fantasy VII will recall the bloody trail Sephiroth left Cloud and the gang to follow to President Shinra's body. Yuffie and Sonon's walk from the prototype VR simulator to the final boss fight totally captured that same feeling of horror and dread, where you kind of see like the purpley remains and stuff. But yeah, I hadn't connected that analogy, but I think that's very smart, Andrew Vala. Also, I guess we didn't talk about that fight before, where's that weird sequence where they're stuck in the VR simulator and they're like, set the pain level at max, maximum pain, make Yuffie feel everything, make her bleed if she blinks, blah. And then that enemy kept turning into a cute little Yuffie frog.
Wait, what?
The most annoying attack. I hate that.
You didn't get frogged?
You didn't get frogged? None at all?
No, I had the ribbon.
Oh,
you guys not been the ribbon?
You had the ribbon. I had the ribbit.
I believe that's strike 3.
See you in hell, internet. Cloud of smoke. All right. Connor writes in though and says, as an OG fan who avoided Dirge and largely. How do you avoid a Dirge? As an OG fan who avoided Dirge and largely doesn't know.
What? Did he avoid?
He dodged the Dirge. We got a Dirge Dodger, boys. Get him. I thought we were drafted to the Dirge.
Dirge Dodger.
The 23rd century. As an OG.
Bone spurs.
I can't handle the Dirge. I mean, in some way, isn't Grant the ultimate Dirge Dodger?
What?
When he released that virus from the lab just so we didn't have to keep playing Dirge of Cerberus and forced me to play? I thought that
was a bullshit move, dude.
Arguably worse to watch than it is to play.
That is true. Anyways, Kyle, there's this game called Dirge of Cerberus.
I dodged that one.
Oh, okay. Anyways, Connor writes in, repeatedly trying to make this point. As an OG fan who avoided Dirge and largely doesn't know anything in it, the vocal apprehension of the community towards it put this DLC in a really weird place considering how high... why can't I read? Considering how high feelings were towards Remake Part 1. It seems like they did well and kept the weird stuff minimal and limited to Weiss and Nero, and that's it. But I came out thinking that if anything, the weird quote-unquote dirge aesthetic of the characters and the dark purple energy actually set up a certain future character pretty well. The hero of Dirge. I'm sure he'll be an interesting factor once they get around to him.
Coming soon to a DLC to you.
I mean, it seems likely. But I love them mentioning the Dirge aesthetic because it's so interesting that it feels more dated than like the designs from the 90s. I know people were talking about like Jesse's weird breastplate is bizarre and looks weird in the remake, but compare that to like when we see Nero and it's just the most 2005 looking design I've ever seen in my life. Somehow it's aged worse aesthetically. It's just a whole saga compacted in there.
Could be in a Stained music video.
Oh, huge in the music video world, yeah. But here's the thing though. Like, we like Final Fantasy VII. We honor and respect the Dirge. And so part of me is like, it's probably fun for them. It's probably fun for people like Nomura to dig through his big back catalog of toys and like dust off these old designs. He's probably nostalgic about it. I'm sure people that worked on this game are nostalgic about like, oh man, it's kind of cool. We get to bring these Dirge boys back in town. Even if seeing Nero and Weiss makes our skin crawl and yes, they're some of the most horrific characters.
Just floods us with fear for the future of this franchise.
I mean, I would rather have them, honestly, than original bad guys that were in the basement. Like, it's more fun to have an Easter egg or a callback.
No, actually, no. That's a totally fair point. It's just like, well, if they're going to make a new character or dive into the toy box that they have kind of created over the past 15 years, like, maybe it's not the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Hojo could have been down there spitting out little freaky creations or something instead. Like,
give us more Hojo. Yeah, actually, I agree with that too. Yeah,
because it does make me fearful for what's to come.
Yeah.
But maybe this is just self-contained. This is just the nod to the Dirge, and then we can all move on with our lives. But I do wish that they did have a line where they said, "We're the bad guys in the basement." I wish they just were on Front Street with that kind of great dialogue that Kyle just pitched, because I feel like they kind of threw some options away.
Yeah.
I did like the little moment, and I feel like this is them acknowledging how silly it is, but there's a moment where Nero's just doing his normal, cool, memorable Nero stuff of, I'm gonna hurt you real bad, or whatever the hell he's talking about.
We need to feel death.
Exactly, yeah. It's some real like
leather on my face.
It's like some real Gray Fox stuff. But like he says some line, and then Yuffie just goes, "Cool." Now moving aside, like she has like some quick retort, like, "Yeah, cool, whatever, weirdo." We got some stuff. That's like the best line delivery I think from Yuffie in here.
I also like his response to that is just to kind of laugh at her for not being intimidated whatsoever.
Right. And then I did like that cutscene too in the middle of the fight where he like picks her up and throws her through the window, like into all those scientists and stuff. Like, there's cool movements here. Nero gets to stand up and say, "Let the games begin." Just like our boy Giancarlo Esposito did during E3, if you remember, during Summer Game Fest. So there's cool things.
He was preemptively teasing that. He knew that was coming up.
Yeah, that's what he was referencing.
Yeah, Nero's kind of like the Gus of the Final Fantasy universe, I think, in a lot of ways. Joshua Caleb, though, writes in and says, "This DLC has made me even more curious what they plan on doing with Dirge going forward. Because Dirge of Cerberus takes place after the events of Final Fantasy VII, and now we got Weiss and Nero yucking it up with Yuffie before she even meets up with Cloud and company. Do you think they're going to incorporate more Dirge characters or plot lines in a remake, or is this just a one-off bit of fan service for those diehard Dirge fans. There has to be tens of them, right? Oh yeah. Oh, those Dirge heads are out there. I think we already talked about it. I think it could be self-contained if it wants to be. And I'm holding out hope that it is just teasing stuff for that weird mobile remake of Dirge, just to try and plant some of those seeds.
I mean, I think I still kind of feel like the evidence points to that this is going to be kind of self-contained, or if they are going to tell this story, it is going to be more in terms of like the DLC. I don't know. As I said that, I kind of thought about just like the evidence to suggest otherwise. But again, it's just my voicing my hope.
Yeah. Interrata submits a comment on Patreon saying the cat from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Do you guys remember that? Kyle, you remember that cat?
How can I forget?
Okay.
He looks over stuff. He looks sad sometimes.
Yep. The cat from Final Fantasy VII Remake and Yuffie have almost the exact same reaction to the plate falling. They both fall on their knees as it falls. Coincidence? You tell me. That it did look.
We're using animation? Maybe.
They just put her character model on the cat. That it did look awesome. Like seeing the plate fall from that perspective, like that one shot, I think did a better job of clearly showing how there was no way anybody down there could survive. But then in Remake, we learned that basically everyone was fine. Survived. Yeah, everyone just survived so they could have their final dying speech, but that's fine. We love you, game. Chris Prohaska writes in with a very curious tale. Are you ready for this spooky legend? Chris says, I have two friends staying with me right now, and they happen to be watching for the second chapter of this DLC. They both barely play games. They both barely play games. They and
let's do Hooked on Phonics here.
Well, Ronnie, some comments have typos in them, and it's tough to edit it on the fly. They both barely play games, and they know nothing about Final Fantasy, but they called the final cutscenes "quote unquote" art, and said even though they didn't have a clue what was going on, they were invested. It was really cool getting such positive responses from a perspective that's so different from what I'm used to, and I think it speaks to how well done the game is. That's amazing. I'm really curious which cutscenes in particular, if it was like the death scene or the plate falling or what it was, but...
Well, I mean, if you're not a cynic, like, and you see that on a PlayStation 5, you're not a big gamer. I mean, that looks like the future of video games, like undeniably. Like, say what you want about that game, but it's like it's like the best looking console game there is, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
wait. Yeah. For this game? Is the best looking console game?
Yeah, the remake, I mean, the DLC, like, if you're not a big gamer, and like you see that and you're like, that's what video games look like right now. I mean, I think you're going to be impressed.
Especially the cutscenes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But that is not the ending. I mean, we see Yuffie and she's singing and the amazing Yuffie wants you to join her team. Sky's the limit. Here we go. I'm riding on this Chocobo. Wahoo! But that's not the ending, folks, because we get a little bonus. Ronnie, regale us. What is this? What is this big bonus ending?
I was just kind of thinking it felt like just like a podcast episode of just them just kind of like talking, just like as they were walking towards.
Who are you talking about?
They being Cloud, Red 13. We got Tifa, we got Barrett, we got Aerith, and all these guys are just hanging out, walking, figuring out what it means when somebody says that it's a day's walk ahead of us. What does that mean? Is that 12 hours? Is that 24 hours? Well, it turns out Elmira was right.
You really did just play this.
I actually really genuinely liked that dialogue. I liked that sort of just like passive kind of like, what do you mean when you say a day? Well, this is what I mean. I don't know. I really liked it as just like, you know,
what do you mean you don't tip? Moment, I don't tip.
Yeah. It made me appreciate and also just like understand that like they know exactly the things that we just like totally want to like absorb. It's just like those incredibly wonderful, inconsequential character moments where they're just bullshitting with each other.
Yeah.
Like that's just the best thing ever. And that like that was just the thing that we were rewarded with was just like it feels like 7 minutes of that. It awesome.
Yeah, just seeing
it made it totally worth it.
Seeing Tifa teach Aerith how to hitchhike, I'm like, well, I didn't think I wanted to see that, but that's fantastic.
Definitely do want to see that.
More of it, please.
The cutscenes at the end were worth the price of admission. Even if you get nothing else out of the DLC, just that 8-minute cutscene is like, oh, this is fantastic. Snippets of things that we have never seen before from our little beloved posse.
And it's effectively, Tifa even says, like, I guess this is goodbye to the city of Mako. It's the big sign off for like, okay, goodbye Midgar. Mako. I'm sorry.
Mako.
Rearrange everything. Ludo in the backstage pass points out that it's interesting that Red didn't talk during that entire section.
I did also make note of that too.
You can't play him. He doesn't talk. What does he do?
They're not respecting him. He's going to have his moment. He'll have the moment, the big part 2.
Like, Barrett's big breathe that fresh air in, like, actually on second thought, let's go a little bit further away from Midgar
before we breathe.
I like that.
That's so good.
So my reaction to the cutscene from like a technical perspective, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, because in the original game, when you leave Midgar, you're in that sort of like big open world Final Fantasy thing, right? Yeah. Where you can kind of you walk big long distances. Does this imply that element of the game is gone? Because they basically turned the traveling to the next area into a cutscene.
Yep.
So does that mean that part 2 is going to maintain the sort of linearity of part 1, even though we were all hoping to have more freedom to walk around and stuff like that?
I think big time. Yeah. Andrew Bowers wrote in with that exact question. I think that's very much what it's implying, is that it's going to be.
They haven't had a world map since Final Fantasy 9. I feel like,
Well, I mean, 15 is open world for like 80% of the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
I didn't. Oh, go ahead, Grant.
I feel like there's certain elements of 7 that it would make it very tough to do a world map. Every part of me wants there to be one, but I don't know if that'd be technically possible.
Yeah, I think it's sad, but it's so much cleaner design wise, just to be like cutscene bringing you to the next area, and then maybe there's like a freaking warp pipe or something where you can like travel around in some way to get from one location to the next. Or realistically, it's going to be Mass Effect style, right? Where let's say hypothetically you get some sort of flying vehicle in Final Fantasy VII, like it's like, okay, it's always going to be parked at this. Oh, I'm sorry. It's always going to be parked at this area, and then you go over there, and it's like now boarding to Normandy, and then let's fly to Bone Village,
right? Like regardless, it's like that, which is like a perspective that I took from Jeff Cork famously, where it's like not my problem, of like I recognize that it would be hard to make a big open world that you can walk around in, but it's what I want, and it seems like it's not going to happen at this point.
I also think that, but also I think with like the problem with the whole not my problem thing is like, well, what sort of mitigates your expectations in terms of like grounds it in reality. I feel like
the fact that the game that it's based on included it.
Yeah,
but remaking a game, and that's like a major element of the game, is like a big world that you could walk around in. I mean,
Midgar in the original felt tiny, and given the footprint that they gave Midgar in this,
right,
like trying to scale the entire world to its actual size and have you flying over it or walking over it would just be insane at this point.
And I totally like hear, because I absolutely agree. Like I think it would be the absolute coolest thing in the world. Like if they could, blow it up into what my brain wants it really to be. I almost like, if somebody were asking me like, do you actually think like technically speaking, is that even possible? I'd be like, no, I don't think that would be. Just based on like how big the world is. But again, like I'm sure there's workarounds where they could kind of figure it out. But I just don't see them like moving in that direction.
I think we probably talked about this before the deepest dive, but I still think it's possible that they could make this next one also kind of a little bit more linear with the areas, and then save like part 3 for the second continent is fully open world. And that's like their big push. And their big hook.
You know how the Master Chief Collection, you can just press a button to swap from new to old.
Right.
Just go back to dumb cartoons and we can fly around and walk across the map that way.
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't need to fly because maybe we'll just stay in the back of this truck that's driven by Chocobo Bill himself. With all of our old friends are coming back to say hi, even if he doesn't seem very friendly in that truck at all. But you know,
Seems very friendly
from the original game.
That's true. That's true. What's that, Kyle?
Chocobo Bill's from the original game?
Yeah, he's like, top tier character. Jonathan Penn writes in and says, it was such a pleasant surprise to have such a lengthy scene of the main crew after the credits, and the final shot of Colm and the road to the Chocobo farm is the perfect segue into part 2. The one very minor gripe I have is that the landscape looks so barren. I know this is meant to be the case surrounding Midgard due to the Mako extraction, but I was hoping to see a more verdant landscape as the story moves to other locations. It also felt strikingly similar to the early environments in 15. Here's hoping for greener pastures in part 2.
Also, the other thing about that cutscene. Are you okay, Hans?
I don't think so.
Are you part
The other
2
thing about that
yourself?
cutscene. The other thing I was wondering about that cutscene is that how part 2 opens? Because like you can't assume that everyone's played the DLC. Is that the opening cutscene of 2, and then we get the title, and I don't know.
Somebody.
Oh lordy. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, I still think. Yeah, Ben Ritchie wrote in about it as well. Ben Ritchie wrote in saying I was right. Saying, side note, it seems like Hansen's prediction that part 2 is going to begin with a cold open flashback is spot on, and I'm doubling down on that. I don't think it'll open here. I think it's going to be cold open flashback sequence going into some fun, good lore stuff. I think it's perfectly set up for that really cool way to open it.
I think you're dead wrong.
Are you serious?
No.
We set a reminder for 2025.
Yeah. But hang on, like going back to, what the previous person said about like it being kind of barren, like also it was like in the original game, like there was this huge, like kind of barren wasteland surrounding Midgar. So I mean, like it works, right?
Yeah, it was just kind of rocky, yeah, but that looks so small on the world map, and now it's like, oh, now it's just barren for a while.
Yeah.
Ben Ritchie also writes in, oh my God, we got to get into this whole thing. He says, I'm dreaming of, for the next game, a Roche and Zach team up. They probably know each other already since they're both in Soldier. Seeing the walls of Calm finally gave us our first real look at the world of the remake outside of Midgard. I could not be more excited. It is weird that Calm was so walled off, but Zach and Roche team up. Okay, we got to get into this. Silent Consonant writes in and says, we see Zach return to the church in Sector 5, and he's greeted by refugees from the Sector 7 plate collapse. We assume there's barely any evidence, but do you think Zach has returned to the original game's timeline? Remember this fun stuff from the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Yes-ish.
Well, so
Yes.
the sort of things that I was seeing online as someone who hasn't played the original 7 is that people are saying that like Zach, whatever's going on with Zach is happening on an entirely separate timeline because the church was not as dilapidated in this cutscene.
Interesting.
The last time we saw it, but I mean that's like that could just be circumstantial, which is like would be a weird thing if like through the next course of the next game we see like the main timeline with the characters that you're controlling, and then occasional like here's Zach in the other dimension doing his own thing or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, given that he's expecting Aerith to be there, I mean, lends itself to think that this is the same timeline for me.
Well, I mean, that still would check out. Like, he still has that history with Aerith that even if he was in the alternate dimension, like, Aerith probably was in that dimension as well. I mean,
alternate Aerith. An Eris, if you will.
That would be fun. Oh my God, would that be cool if her name was Eris?
See, mark that one down for 2025.
Yep, please mark it down.
That was mine.
So yeah, I mean, what we know about Zach is in the remake, the ending, you see him fighting off a bunch of soldiers.
Let me cut you off. Let me explain everything I know about Zach.
Yeah, please.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't even know his name.
His name is Zach.
All right, continue.
We see him surviving a bunch of soldiers and then carrying Cloud. Yeah, it's very clearly Cloud.
Keep up. Keep up.
Well, I'm trying to remember how much they revealed, but it's him carrying Cloud back towards Midgar after all the fates are like, thank you, and they all disappeared or whatever the hell happened at the end of Shinra Tower. And so they're on their way back, and then like they pass by, this is in the original, or in Remake's cutscene, they pass by Cloud insinuating that yes, it is still that different dimension thing. So I don't see any evidence here, unless I'm missing something, that it is now somehow he's in their same dimension. Is it possible they just wanted to remind you that Zach is technically alive in this alternate universe where, we all remember there's not Stamp the dog, but there's little Yorkie, the stupid looking dog, instead?
It's weird that that's his name in that timeline.
I might have to play the final chapter of the remake again.
Well, the basic, because I had to get a refresh on this too. The thing that you're saying, Hanson, is like when you see Zach in the original remake, there's like was it like a candy bar wrapper or something that floats by?
It's the chip bag, yeah.
And it implies that it's like a different dimension or timeline because it's a different dog.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like Into the Spider-Verse where there's like, Coca-Cola is spelled differently, that kind of
Right. Or it's like yesterday when we don't know who the Beatles are.
I think mine's better.
I think Kyle's is better. So I maybe, again, I'm missing something, but I think it's just setting up and reminding you about the fact that Zach got home, and even in this alternate dimension, he still can't be united with Aerith. But then, why would Aerith not be there? Is that the hint? I'm working through this now. Is that the hint that it is now the same dimension because Aerith is not in that church?
I mean, I would imagine it kind of makes sense that the end of this Final Fantasy VII Chapter 1, Part 1, like, is now just like other timelines merging together.
But where was the indicator that, why are they merged? Because you see the fates disappear in the end of the remake, and then after that is when he passes by Cloud, and it's very, I think, hinted that like, okay, they're passing by each other but not seeing each other because they're in separate worlds.
Who knows, man? Chalk it up to spirits or some shit.
Okay, is it spirits, do you think? Do you think Zach would like those nuts?
Do you think? I think he'd like those nuts.
Do you rock it, Chow?
I mean, I mean, could it? Oh God, I don't know. Could it possibly be? Could it possibly be? But that the things that you were defeating at the end of Final Fantasy VII were ultimately like the catalyst for things merging together.
I would think that, except for the fact that I just rewatched this and he looks at Midgar and they all disappear. And then after that, he's still in a different dimension from Cloud.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But who knows? Colin Mahavalich says, based on the ending, are there now 2 Buster Swords in existence within this timeline? It's confusing. Also, more importantly,
he doesn't have materia equipped in it either, which is pretty disappointing.
Freaking rookie. Colin also says, more importantly, rush. Yeah, if anybody has any more insight into the Zach thing, I'd love to figure out. But clearly, Square loves Zach. The directors, the team over there loves Zach, and Zach is going to be a big part moving forward. So, Kyle, get ready for Zach.
Can wait, will wait.
Okay. Rich
in
Carrasco.
For a wild ride, dude.
You ain't seen nothing
Breaking
yet.
out the PSP.
Zach Fair. Rich Carrasco writes in and says, Yuffie throwing herself on the blue checkpoint chairs like they were nothing but the comfiest couches distressed me. I know like she's supposed to be bouncy and adorable, but I'm pretty sure every bone in her butt is broken from slamming herself down on those wood and metal benches. The lesson this DLC taught me, don't skip leg day.
She's 16.
Don't skip teeth day either.
That's right. Teeth day is very important if you're a ninja. Okay. Those ninjas are weird, as Mayo or whatever her name says. Mayo, was that her name?
Mayo.
Yeah, but that was fun. I liked. There's like at the lowest emotional moment of the game, where it's like, all hope is lost. You can still jump on that bench. And it's like, wee, a bench, my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
I did like too how much Yuffie was just slacking off Midgar, just talking about how terrible this town is.
Place sucks.
Yeah. And I like her even being like, I'm very into this stupid amount of lore when she hinted about that idea that the marketing for Midgard's being advertised as like the city of the future. It's all great. And then she gets there and it's like, oh, they've never mentioned the slums in any of the advertising for Midgard for the rest of the world here.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. She also has that line too where she goes, get some sleep in this city with all this noise? Freaking possible. She's cute.
Yeah, I remember that.
She does her own thing. Do you got any favorite Yuffie lines I haven't shared yet, Ronnie?
Oh.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Oh.
There it is. Carl Lewington writes and it says, does this hint towards future chapters in what the hell are you doing? Carl Lewington writes and says, does this hint towards future chapters involving other main party members from the original? I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but it's called Intermission, right? It's not called the Yuffie story, which I feel like will leave that door more open, I think, to more character stuff. But I could see them doing a character-specific piece of DLC in between every big game. Maybe one piece of DLC, you think?
Is Yuffie like missable in the original game? Or any characters missable?
Yep, her and the Dirge of Cerberus man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, maybe that's like, I would be curious to play the rest of the game and be like, why was Yuffie separated like this? You know what I mean?
Yuffie is harder to miss than old dirty Dirge boy himself.
Yeah. I mean, is there a universe where she's optional in the remake part 2? No.
I mean, she currently is optional, technically.
Yeah, you have to.
If you skip the DLC,
you have to follow. Wario 64.
That's it. Like if she's just not actually in the main story, but she always she is the sort of host to all the DLC moving forward.
Just one step behind at all times.
Yeah.
I'm just laughing at the idea of Sonon being a completely dropped thread. Just
yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, what are you gonna think? Let's see. I could see them making some cat DLC. Honestly, like if they were to make other DLC, I feel like the cat timeline is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he'd be doing some very boring things from every glimpse we've seen.
Just shuffling papers amongst folders.
I mean, honestly.
Oh, no.
I hope they don't drop the plate. And that's what he sounds like.
They did drop the plate.
So who can say? But I think that's it for community questions. Thanks to everybody who submitted so many great questions over there on patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Thanks for helping us create the best, most thorough discussion about Intermission on the internet. Anything we haven't hit?
I have a save that before you go into chapter 2, because it gives you the point of no return message.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, all right. I'm tempted to go back and try and talk to some of the characters around the city, because I really didn't talk to anybody. Like, I was just happy to move on, and I feel like I did miss some fun stuff.
Yeah. You should dabble in the Condor. Respect the Condor, I think is what we recommend.
Absolutely.
No, you'll learn to like it. I think it's really great.
Yeah. I think the way that you just said is there's fun moments. There's nothing that's illuminating there. It's just more fun in that environment.
Yeah, seeing the remake
explains who
characters come
Zach
back.
is or anything like that.
No. Well, yeah, that does happen.
That's Roche's dialogue as you're playing the Fort Condor section.
The thing about Zach.
Now it's confusing because at first blush.
Oh, come here, friend. I have a story for you.
Grant, I am stunned. Roche. I am stunned that you haven't played Stranger of Paradise yet.
Why?
Because you're a big Souls guy and you're Final Fantasy guy number 1 and you freaking hate chaos. You're right there.
Gotta kill chaos.
Oh, chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched part of your stream. I feel like I got the gist of it. I don't know.
That was a really rough stream. I needed you, dude. That was a rough one.
Sorry, you started at 4:00. I was working still.
That's all right. Do you guys want to play the Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale with me?
No.
I'm busy.
I have a Pixel 3a that can kind of run Hearthstone on a good day. So
okay. No. Okay. All right. So just Ronnie and I just teaming up. We got duos here. Where we dropping, boys?
Let's do it.
Honeybee in again? Okay. I guess we're dropping
every time.
I am looking forward to that weird thing. It's weird. I thought they were going to shadow drop it during E3, but apparently not. They got big plans for whenever that thing's hitting big. Ronnie, overall, concluding thoughts on Integrate Intermission?
Yeah, I'm glad I played it. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. I really liked it. I think, it's like one of those things where the thing that I really like about it is sort of like what they show on the characters that I'm really invested in, or the story that I'm really invested in. So I think that like gives it that extra point. But it's just like, it's more Final Fantasy VII. The combat feels really good. And there's just kind of like those weird kind of like funny moments where it's just like, a lot of this is very inconsequential. But who am I to complain, because I'm like having fun the whole time. So
yeah, it's just nice to go back to that world. And Kyle, I'm very curious if there are people in your camp that were, I don't know. I mean, Kyle, you described yourself story-wise as not that into it overall, or do you think it still worked enough for you to enjoy your experience?
I mean, I will absolutely play part 2, but like, and I really like the characters and I like the story, but like we've talked about it before, the ending left a really sour taste in my mouth. Like overall, just like really dipping into like Kingdom Hearts shenanigans that are in depth without being interesting. Yeah. And but I'm eager to like see what's next. And there's always the option for me to go play the original. You know what I mean? I have the Switch version, which I get more and more tempted to do,
Yeah. Ronnie,
turns out it's actually a really good game.
It's very good. It's kind of like defined our lives largely.
Oh, okay.
Right. Ronnie and Grant, do you guys want to kick yourselves?
What?
Ana Diaz just finished Final Fantasy VII, the original game, for the first time. And yet Ronnie did not talk to her at our little MinnMax get together.
You did not give me an opportunity. Like it is upon your responsibility to at least give us the opportunity to talk, because we were not even in a conversation together where I could have been like, hey, by the way, like, hi, nice to meet you. You did me dirty.
Yeah, I really feel
you dirty
dirged.
I dirty dirged this man. I dirty dirged that potential amazing conversation of unpacking all of Final Fantasy VII.
It would have been amazing.
I know. Grant, final thoughts on Intermission?
Coming into this, I would put myself in a camp where I would say I have negative feelings towards Yuffie.
Yes.
Coming out of this thing filled in a gap that I didn't know I wanted an explanation for as to why she is anywhere near Midgar.
Yeah.
And god dang it, I kind of like that little rascal now that I'm done.
Really?
Yeah.
Your heart of ice has officially melted.
It's open.
Gone.
My
open for business.
God, stunning.
It's the Metal Gear Solid 5 approach, right? Like answering questions you didn't know you wanted answered. With satisfying answers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Did you say the approach?
Approach. All right, thanks so much, everybody. We hope that we gave the game the discussion it deserved, and thank you so much for supporting this format moving into the future over at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's to unlock the podcast version of all future Deepest Dives, all previous Deepest Dives, and help support this concept in general. We appreciate it. Any help sharing it with a friend who also loves Final Fantasy VII is appreciated. And by God, if there's more Final Fantasy VII, we'll be back. The signal will go up and we'll all return. We'll rise from our graves for the rest of time to talk about Final Fantasy VII even more. Thanks so much. Except for Jeff. We'll see if he can get a PS5 within the next 7 years. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You can help support independent games media by subscribing to MinnMax on YouTube here, or you can support us over on Patreon to unlock exclusive shows like MinnMax Council. You can call into our podcast. You can put a picture of your choice on every MinnMax video, or you could have us plug your passion project on the MinnMax Show podcast. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better, and we exist because of you. Any help telling a friend's appreciated.